Last round at the Texas Motor Speedway, PGRL season point leader Brian Yazik was dominant, earning the pole, posting the fastest lap, and leading all but 22 of the night's 167. However, a late race caution gave 4 drivers the shot to win. After a crazy dash to the checkered flag, Thomas George snatched the win away from the field. George's first victory of the season puts him within striking distance of Brian Yazik. These plate races always have plenty of passing and are exciting from flag to flag. We'll have to see who takes the checkered flag in tonight's affair. Thank you so much for joining us for the I'm in Danger 250 presented by MC Squared Editing Services. You're watching the Pretty Good Racing League on the Virtual Grip Network. I'm Austin Belke, joined in the booth by J.R. Shepard and Kenny Kibbe, with our director Trevor Greenfield in the production trailer. JR, this is the second time we've been here this year. What can you tell us about Talladega?
Well, Austin, Talladega Superspeedway is a 2.66 mile tri-oval that has the turns banked at 33 degrees, with the tri-oval itself banked at over 16 degrees. This Superspeedway, it was built for one reason, and that was to be the fastest on the NASCAR circuit back when it first opened in 1969. A lot's changed since the cars back then. Back then, the racing was mostly single file with multiple lead changes occurring, rapid lead changes occurring, simply due to the fact that the cars had so much throttle response along with a huge effect of the draft. This, however, led to some extremely scary wrecks because of that. This track led to the mandation of what we have today with the restrictor plates after a 1987 crash by Bobby Allison, whose engine exploded, cut his tire down, almost sent him into the catch fence grandstands on the tri-oval section. NASCAR decided the cars were way too fast, and today we have plate racing. The racing is even more intense because of that. The cars have less throttle response, meaning they rely on the draft a whole lot more from the car that's ahead of them. This has produced what is known as pack racing, where tonight you will see lines form that are 2, sometimes 3 wide and 10 plus rows deep. This track is very easy to drive when you're by yourself, guys, or even when you're in a single file line, but once that pack forms, this place is mentally exhausting. Drivers will have to not only worry about their own car and what's ahead, but also what is beside and coming from behind them at all times. We no longer have scary single car wrecks. Instead, we have massive multi-car wrecks that are almost impossible to avoid here. Things will happen quickly here, and drivers will have to react even quicker. Some drivers have equated racing here as being equal to a high-speed chess match. Unfortunately, Austin, some of these drivers will only be good enough to play checkers here tonight. Either way, this race is sure to produce some exciting racing and is also known for producing some unexpected winners due to that equalizing effect of the draft. Bottom line, if you start this race tonight and avoid the big one, you have a chance to win.
Thanks, JR. Kenny, it sounds like you have a couple keys for victory here tonight. This place is always crazy. It continues to be a crazy race.
Yeah, guys, so tonight it's a 250-mile event, 94 laps. 7 sets of tires are in the pits for these drivers. However, I don't think tire wear will become a huge factor, but drivers may use some pit strategy, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Fuel limit, as always, 75%, with a 28 to 30 lap fuel run being the full fuel allotment. If they do occur, you're going to have to stay in the draft and really coordinate that. You'll have to make sure you have dancing partners, that you have a drafting partner to leave your pits with you. Also, make friends in high places, meaning, you know, you want to have a drafting partner at all times, no matter what, under green flag pit stops or green flag conditions. And you kind of want to look out for drivers who have really made a lot of moves, who have maybe been aggressive but smart, calculating about their moves, who can get up to the front. It's going to be important who you can team up with in this race. And lastly, stay out of trouble. You know, JR touched on it earlier. You just have to survive. That's really the biggest thing. You might see some drivers kind of tail off of the pack and not really contend into the last 10, maybe even 5 laps. So a lot of times survival means a top half finish automatically. But every once in a while you get a Talladega race that doesn't have a whole lot of wreck. We saw some pretty clean racing in the real races this past weekend here at Talladega, so could see more of the same. It's just a very unpredictable event.
Thanks, Kenny. Awesome keys to victory there. We're going to now talk to the pole sitter for tonight's event, winning the Mahan Speed Laboratories You Finished Last Pole Award. This week it's Pete Baskins. Pete, how you feeling?
Alright guys, pole hopefully I'm feeling good. Hopefully this will go well. It's Talladega. Not exactly sure what to expect out of this one. Probably just trying to hang around up front if we can, but if we end up getting shuffled back a little bit, just drop to the back and let it go for a while.
Now, Pete, when we were at Daytona to open up this season, we saw you and your Patriot Media teammates often working together. Have you guys been talking all this week to kind of get a game plan going here of what you're going to do late in the race?
Yeah, I think we're gonna try and stick around together if we're still all near each other. We also have some other relationships with other teams as well, so we got a good base around us. We know who we work well with. I've been teammates in the past with LPM, so I worked really well with Michael and Brian and those guys. So I'm looking forward to a fun race.
10-4, Pete. Best of luck tonight. Hopefully we can talk to you at the end of tonight's race.
I hope so too. You guys have a good one. Enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. That was Pete Baskins. He's sitting on the pole for tonight. We'll put him back in his Discord room. And now it's time for your starting order for tonight's affair. Of course, the starting order, as is every week that we have back-to-back races in the same championship season. The starting lineup is organized by an inversion of the finishing results from the last week's race, with the exception, of course, of the last two seasons champions lining up at the back of the pack. Pete Baskins sits on pole with James Kahula to his outside. Woody Mahan's going to roll off in third, followed by Jordan Harnish in fourth. Brady Cure starts in fifth, followed by John Wilco to his outside. Jacob Bruff rolls off in seventh, followed by Rich Jetty in eighth. Adam Jersky rolls off in ninth, followed by Joe Alberico, who rounds out the top 10. Matthew Wheeler starts in 11th, followed by Chance Manning in 12th, with Greg O'Berry in 13th and Jonathan Cogswell in 14th. Cody Dempster was hot in the Daytona race earlier this season. He'll roll off tonight in 15th place, followed by Isaiah Dupre in 16th. Brian Yazik, who's been hot all season, ever since even last season. The last two races, he went back-to-back, winning them both. He'll start in 17th. Mike Rasmus, Mr. Consistency, rolls off in 18th, followed by Michael Krobach in 19th, and last week's winner, Thomas George, who rolls off in 20th, JR.
Yeah, starting 21st tonight, we have Christopher DeWald in the 82 car. Alongside him in 22nd is James Moore. Starting 23rd is Drew Carroll. 24th was our Daytona winner, Norm Pelletier. Starting 25th is Django Matthews. Alongside him in 22nd, we have Don Runkle Jr. Starting 27th tonight is Clarence Bonner. Alongside him in 28th is Justin Rector. 29th is Tim Weinkoff. Starting 30th is Jimmy Kubanek. 31st, Harley Moss. Starting 32nd is Tommy Gossett. And in our last row tonight, we have the 93 car of Travis McQuistion. And alongside him, our only past champion in the field from this year, Scott Eckridge, starting 34th.
Good to have Scott Eckridge back. And how about the return of old DJR, Don Runkle Jr., sorry, DRJ. Unfortunately, Jeff Ward, again, not able to make it to tonight's affair. You see a couple drivers starting on pit road. Oftentimes will have a caution earlier in the going in the race. And guys, it's all about when that big one is going to happen. I see Norm Pelletier has dropped due to upload packet loss, so hopefully he makes it back in time. The iRacing pace car getting ready to pull down pit road. At Daytona, you'd see the start-finish line in the center of the tri-oval, but Bill France Jr. was having trouble, was having trouble selling the seats on the right side of the tri-oval past the start-finish line. So at Talladega, he learned from his mistakes at Daytona and moved that start-finish line all the way outside to the far end of the tri-oval. That's where it is here today. Green flag flies in the air as Pete Baskins puts his foot on the lotto pedal. He's already getting a pretty big push here by Woody Mahan.
Yeah, Woody's going to try to work with Pete to try to get pushed out front here and work together to stay ahead of this pack. That's going to be one of the things we're going to watch tonight, is guys working together. You will have to have a partner if you want to succeed ultimately here tonight.
You can already see the line starting to form up. Usually around here, guys like to stay on the bottom because you can't pass below that yellow line. iRacing doesn't officially officiate that rule. However, usually it's kind of a rule of thumb that most drivers just don't. You can see the top line, though. At Daytona, the top line was pretty useful because guys were a lot easily more able to carry their momentum on the high side rather than having to lift and turn the wheel just a little bit more on the bottom side. You see a lot of guys, though, starting to get loose already off the turn 4, Kenny.
Yeah, they are, and I'm very curious to see how much handling plays into effect. And, you know, handling does become a factor in turbulent air, and that's one thing that I'm trying to focus on from the driver's perspective. Is early in the going, I do want to get into the draft and just to see what my car will feel like. And if it really gets quite hairy up there in the draft, we look like they're going to wreck or something like that, I'll drop back. But I think it's important for these drivers to experiment at least a little bit to feel their cars out and see what they have underneath.
Yeah, these guys are feeling really racy tonight. They've got even a third groove up top. They're going to have to watch out, though. Norm Pelletier, Daytona winner. He's a lap down, started from the pits. He just barely got into the session in time. He's going to be the first driver to go one lap down. Hopefully, for Norm's sake, he can stay the first driver one lap down. And as soon as we get a caution, he can take advantage of that and get that lucky dog award.
Definitely going to want to jump in behind this pack as quickly as possible. These cars seem to lose the draft pretty quickly if you're the last guy in line, so definitely want to stay tucked up behind the guy in front of you.
Look at Craig O'Berry. He's giving a huge push right now to Jordan Harnish, the 97 to the 22 car. Oh, he's going to force him. Oh, they're wrecking up in the front, the backstretch up in the wall.
Like it's going to be a rare two-car incident there, guys. That was a big wreck that could have been a lot worse than what it was. It happened at the front of the pack, and everybody thankfully was good to avoid that one.
Yeah, Kenny, it looked like this was just a case of I believe O'Berry just barely kind of might have pushed the 22 car Harnish just a little bit too wrong coming up off the corner, got him loose, and when Harnish went to correct, he just was forced to go up the track. But talk me through this one.
Yeah, so it looks like O'Berry's a little bit offset on Harnish there, and he might have had a little bit of contact. Not sure. Sometimes even if you kind of move across somebody's bumper like, oh, it looks like Harnish might have kind of hung a right, and O'Berry was maybe looking to try to actually make a pass there on the outside, and Harnish moved over. It was probably a case where his spotter was telling him car high, like at the same time that he was moving up, and they just kind of pinned each other into the wall, and it is astonishing that not any more cars were involved in that. Good heads-up driving by all the other PGRL competitors to get by that. And remember, no fast repairs for these drivers. So I think Harnish and Berry will most likely be able to continue. A little bit of damage probably for Harnish at least, but that could have been a lot bigger.
Yeah, certainly could have. You see those two drivers up in the upper wall in the backstretch. Not a whole lot of damage to both of those cars. We'll have to see if they can be competitive later in the race. And they might be good pushers. They just might not be very good leaders. You can see a little bit of damage there to the left side of O'Berry's car, especially on that front end. These cars takes a lot to cut through the air at over 195 miles an hour. So to have anything kind of obstructing that airflow over the car really does a lot to the speed of these race cars. With that being said, that we can take this break in the action as a couple cars come down pit road to review the season's point standings so far. Brian Yazik was just on fire for the last two races of last season. Jeff Ward wrapped up the championship, but Brian has just been continuing his dominant ways. He's been super fast all season long. He's gotten himself a couple more wins. He's gotten himself some pretty fierce competitors, though, in the last couple races. We've seen Thomas George come on to some pretty serious championship form. Woody Mahan won the race, and I believe that was Kansas. So he's been pretty fast. Just a lot of guys coming onto this season with just championship form and, you know, really hauling the mail.
Yeah, absolutely, Austin. And, you know, you've got really tight points battles all the way down through about 7th or 8th place with Cody Dempster, Chance Manning, Adam Jersky, Mike Erasmus. All these guys have had extremely great runs this year. Some bad luck also, but at any point they could turn that luck around and continue to put down some hard numbers there and move up even further into the point standings, maybe try to chase those guys that are in the top 3.
Certainly, and we've seen a lot of heroic stuff here from Cody Dempster. Chance Manning has been fast at a lot of tracks. Even Adam Jersky kind of proving he's not just fast. We saw him debut at Richmond. Mike Rasmus proving why he's Mr. Consistency. He's missed a couple more races than I'm sure he would have liked to stay in the championship hunt, but he's been really fast. We've seen a lot of good stuff here from Greg O'Berry. Lots of fast guys, even pole sitter Pete Baskins. He's been having a pretty good season so far. It's been a lot of different guys really mixing it up here in the podium.
So to add on to that points battle too, with this being Talladega, with how unpredictable it is, it's also one of the largest fields that we've seen in PGRL competition this season with 34 drivers. We've seen quite a few races that have been 25 or maybe even less drivers, so that's a few more points on the table. And if you end up finishing deep down the order, it's going to hurt a little bit more.
Certainly will. This race especially. I mean, if you are one of these guys in this race, we've got, over 30 cars here tonight. That's much more than we've had in a couple of the previous races. Yeah, 34 guys, and usually, we'll top out at just under 30. So even if you did make the race, you're not going to completely show up. Completely, not show up and drop the race, you're still going to lose a ton of points if, let's just say your championship competitor, whether it be George versus Yazik, one of those guys finishes up front. Even with a solid 5th, 10th place finish, you finish 20 points behind them, outside of the top 30. It's going to be a pretty rough night for you.
Yeah, guys, this is one of those tracks that even with a smaller field, it's hit or miss whether you can have a good run or not because of the unpredictability that we spoke of. But the one thing, like you talked about, we have 34 cars here in this field. The main reason for that car count is because anybody in this field can win this race because of the great equalizer of the draft. And with these cars, if you stay out of the big one, you have a shot to win this race, and so many people want that shot to win in the PGRL series.
Certainly do. Lights are out atop the iRacing pace car, so we'll be back to racing action in just a couple seconds here. Although I'd like to take a second just to announce something else, something really cool being put on by Hollow Valley and Sequential Sim Sport. Basically, from now until Tuesday, October 11th, that's an entire week, at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, anyone who makes a $1 donation or more to www.nationalbreastcancer.org and sends proof to either Hollow Valley or Sequential SimSport will be entered to win a free t-shirt from both Hollow Valley and Sequential SimSport. It's really awesome to see a lot of guys really rallying around the support for breast cancer, basically from everybody. A couple of pink cars in the field. I know this weekend, especially at the Charlotte Roval, all the cars, just as they did last year, are running pink window nets to help support the cause.
Yeah, certainly a great cause to be a part of. So definitely, if anybody can offer support, donate some money to that, that is absolutely a great cause to go toward. And you will not be alone. There will be lots of people doing the same.
See, a lot of cars out there are pink, kind of in honor of that. The first of which up in 4th place currently is James Moore in the 21 car. He's got a pretty pink car. His car, of course, is on that banner you see on the right-hand side of your screen, the 21 Sequential SimSport car, but there's others we're going to showcase in the field as the night goes on. The iRacing pace car, though, is going to pull back down pit road. He's already off the track. The restart zone here, like I said, pretty much in the middle of the tri-oval, just due to how far it needs to be ahead of the start-finish line. Hugh Baskins is still up there, but Thomas George, the man who won last week, is up in pretty far in the field, a whopping 18 spots, currently sitting on that front row. Green flag flies once again. Adam Jerski out front, Thomas George to his inside. Looks like, though, Jerski's going to be cleared, and he's going to come down there in front of George and hopefully see if he can't get a push here.
I'm going to try to work with his Ford teammate there. You'll see a lot of manufacturers work together when you come to the plate tracks to try to beat the other manufacturer that is out on track. Tonight, though, you'll also see guys that are from various manufacturers working together, because the most important thing is finding somebody that works together well with you and is able to push you out front, like you see Thomas George doing currently with Adam.
Yeah, especially it's finding those drivers that you can trust real well to be on your bumper. I know Kenny and I, a lot of times we go to the plate tracks in various leagues. You and I will work together, and usually I'm the person being pushed just because I can hold my car in the yellow line. That's all I can do. I'm not very good at managing how fast I catch the car ahead of me, especially when you get into these bump drafting situations. It's a lot better to kind of ease up on the car in front of you and then push them for a prolonged period of time instead of just giving them one big shot to force them out ahead of the field.
Yeah, there's definitely a right way and a wrong way to do it, and you want to kind of ease into the driver ahead of you. Sometimes you don't have a choice, and if you're being hammered from behind yourself, it ends up kind of being a chain of just impacts into the car in front. But then on top of that, you kind of try to avoid bumping in the corners or in the tri-ovals. The car really wants to get light through those parts of the track. You also try to avoid hitting the car in an offset area. You want to try to hit as square as you can. Make things as predictable as possible for the driver being pushed. But the closer and closer you get to the end of these races, the more and more aggressive the pushing gets, the more and more likely that you're going to see a bump draft going wrong.
Thankfully, we're only about 10% away from this race. We have one caution the moment, hopefully knock on wood, to not go ahead and commentate or curse the field, but everybody is pretty much racing each other very clean, very orderly lines here. We haven't seen that third line, form once again on the outside. So everybody kind of just minding their P's and Q's for the moment and kind of just getting acclimated to the setup today. The weather too, we get these hotter conditions. The track gets a little bit slicker, especially this time of year. So the guys have to watch out for that, especially as the race goes on. You're starting to see another pack form further back in the field. Those are the drivers that just really don't even want to be up here. They want to avoid all the chaos in this front pack, and if there is the big one, it'll be on the outside.
Austin, there's definitely different philosophies when it comes to this plate racing. A lot of guys do like to do what you just said and go to the back of the pack, find a couple of guys that just ride back there and keep a draft in a small pack so that they don't lose the main pack, but they're far enough back that they avoid a major wreck up front. Other guys like to just go up front and race and stay into that top 5 position. However, we saw the first caution that was brought out tonight was caused up front and could have created a big mess. So it's just very, very unpredictable. Like Kenny said earlier, what can happen in this track. Everybody does it a little bit differently.
Pete Baskets on the backstretch, ducked out from behind there, Thomas George. Now he's up leading the charge on the high side. And just as I said, there wasn't a third line. Now all of a sudden there is one. It's Woody Mahan up top right now being pushed by Scott Eckridge. And just behind those two drivers is the driver of the 80 car. That's Tommy Gossett, one of the newcomers in the PGRL. They're going up to the front right here.
Third line is fast right now. Those guys got organized. You see the bottom 2 lanes were starting to split up there as that third lane went by, and it really showed speed-wise. Woody Mahan being pushed out front hard by Scott Eckridge right now.
Yeah, look at Brian Yazik. He's coming up to the field just flying at the moment. His outside is the driver of the 99 car, Clarence Bonner. These drivers are really hauling the mail, and Michael Krobach coming up here making it 3 wide between those two.
Yeah, starting to get more dicey moves happening here, but more than anything, these guys are trying to figure out what it's going to take to win this race. At this stage, they're learning. Every single move they make is a learning move that they can use at the very end of this race.
Oh, Clarence Bonner ducks down to the inside of Scott Eckridge. Now he's going to try and lead the middle line. And Kenny, we always like to call the middle line at these races a sucker hole because you get in there, you just get sucked right to the back of the field.
Yeah, you can, but occasionally, it can actually produce good results if you can get a line of cars in there. It's just a lot of drivers don't want to be in that middle lane. You'd rather be up top or in the bottom. And occasionally the top line will kind of turn into the middle line depending on how aggressively they want to get down and side draft in the corners on that bottom lane. But JR, you can talk about this. The one main difference between Talladega and Daytona is that Talladega is so much wider, and even if you're not necessarily trying to be that aggressive, Talladega is so tempting to really make you try moves out because you have so much real estate to work with.
Yeah, absolutely right. Daytona is a lot narrower, especially on the front straightaway. So just from the driver's standpoint inside the race car, you do not even want to attempt to go 3 wide through those areas because very little movement can cause a big mess. Here at Talladega, it's very inviting. The turns are very wide. The front stretch is very wide. So you see lots of opportunities when you get runs on the guy that's in front of you to just take it 2, 3, sometimes 4 wide. And that's what these guys will do at some point because, like you said, it's just so inviting to do so here.
Kenny, it looks like you've got an update on Brady Cure here.
Yeah, we got a replay here. Brady Cure got spun, hit the inside wall, and collected, I believe, Michael Krobach a little bit in the process. And no caution, probably because he was just left outside of the racing line. So we stay green, and Cure is back, I wouldn't say up to speed. He's kind of limping his way into the pits. But yeah, that wreck could have been quite large as well, as he was only in about row 2 in the pack.
Right now out front, it's Christopher DeWald, one of those other guys showcasing the month of October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month. He's got his car all decked out in pink. Just behind him is another sequential sim sport driver, also got his car decked out in pink. He's the guy that we showcased just as we went out of that last caution, James Warren, the 21 machine. Both those drivers, of course, got Hollow Valley on the hood. And real quick, I just want to mention you can, again, donate $1 or more. Send proof of your donation to Hollow Valley or Sequential Sim Sport. You'll be automatically entered to win a t-shirt from both those people. And also for your proof of donation, you can go ahead and email prettygoodracingleague@gmail.com. They can also pass along your donation. Just now, don't look for Brian Yazin. being pushed here by Scott Eckridge out to the front on the high side, guys.
If you notice so far, we have not seen Scott Eckridge do anything to get the lead. There's a big reason for that. He is learning big time. We're seeing some big moves up front there. Guys ducking out of line on Scott there. That may have been Cody Dempster, I believe, making it 3 wide. But Scott has no intention to get the lead right now. He is trying to learn what it takes to push somebody out front so he can ultimately make that move on the guy he's pushing late in the race.
Well, yeah, and Kenny, I'll ask this question to you, and that'll get your opinion too, Jay. Well, a couple guys getting pretty close together right there. That looked to be the 93 of Travis McQuistion and the 24 car of Cody Dempster.
Yeah, and I've seen basically around where Jonathan Cogswell is a few times. Cars have kind of accordioned up into each other and really have had some sketchy moments the past few laps. And that driver that was caught on the outside there, that was actually Tommy Gossett. And, I'll ask you guys this. He went out to the outside, but remember, he's kind of a rookie. He hasn't really been that experienced in this league. He went out to the outside to make a move, and nobody went with him, and he went back to the back. He's been very aggressive trying to make moves to get through the pack, but it doesn't seem like he's getting a whole lot of help right now.
Well, I will say this too. His newness in the league does a lot for drivers to have confidence around him. But boy, you start to do any sort of research on Tommy Gossett. I think Michael Krobach said last week in his interview, the guy's got 7,000 plus iRatings, so definitely very experienced on the platform. He just isn't very acclimated to these drivers and what they're doing.
Yeah, and that's a big, big thing when it comes to plate racing. You have to get guys to trust you and be willing to work with you. If guys are not willing to push you or go with you when you pull out a line, you're going to have to start being the guy that is pushing and gain that trust with some of these guys if you're going to have any shot to win at the end of this race.
Now, back to the question I was going to ask. You talk about Scott Eckridge mostly pushing guys to the lead to see what it will take to push that person out there instead of taking the lead himself. Is this kind of an ulterior motive for late in the race? He's seen, I don't want to be, usually you don't want to be that first guy coming out of turn 4. You want to be that second person, but kind of lag back in 3 and 4, get a huge run off the corner like we saw A.J. Allmendinger do in this past weekend's Xfinity.
Well, we've seen in the past that Yazek and Eckridge have worked really well at these super speedway races, and I don't think either of them two guys really care who's being pushed and who's doing the pushing right now, unless they kind of premeditated that and decided who was better at which role. But of course, when it comes down to the end of these things, Eckridge is going to think in the back of his mind about trying to get the win for himself, and I'm sure Yazek is going to think of some kind of plan to defend that. But yeah, a lot of times the winner ends up being the driver who is not first coming to the white.
We've had plenty of lead changes so far. Usually, though, the two characters that have been out front the most for right now have been Brian Yazek being pushed really heavily there by Scott Eckridge, but mostly it's been the driver on the bottom. It's been Christopher Duwald, and the reason he's been out front for so long is this unwavering support by the driver behind him of James Moore. He and Thomas McQuistion have just been absolutely pushing each other these last couple laps, and they've been very, I'm going to say, particular about it, where they don't do it necessarily just every time they can. They're very methodical about when they get up there and push the driver ahead of them.
Yeah, absolutely. These guys are all working together that's on this inside line at the moment. All they're trying to do is count down laps. Like we said early on, you have to make it to the end of this race if you want a shot to win it. There's no reason to be super crazy at this point. We're only on lap 19 of 94, so these guys are going to continue to ride and put down some laps. You're going to see that outside line try to work together and figure out what they need to do, but nobody at the moment is doing anything too crazy because it is very early in this race.
You can see the drivers right now. There's a lot of guys stacked up on the inside lane and only about 4 or 5 guys up on the high side. JR, when is the point where you kind of say, all right, we've tried this enough. Now we're going to go back on the low side, maybe try out the second lane off the bottom, or just go ahead and lag back and just everybody be single file and maybe just go until you have a pit stop or a caution.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're close to that point. Guys have tried things. They know kind of what they have in the pack. We have 2 different packs right now. We have one that's way behind these guys, almost a whole straightaway behind these guys that are just kind of riding. But guys are starting to get in line. They know the pit stops will be coming up probably in the next 15 laps or so. And there's no reason to race real hard at the moment. You're trying to get to the end of this race. You want to be able to make a clean stop, and the easiest way to do that is to be single file.
Yep, in layman's terms, it's a marathon, not a sprint. To finish first, you must first finish. And all these guys, you can't really win one of these races if your car is junk. You see now, finally, that second line starts to form up once more. You've got Isaiah Dupre right now up front. He's being pushed by newcomer Tommy Gossett. Gossett was probably one of the fastest, if not the fastest drivers last week at Texas Motor Speedway, especially when the tires wore out. There was nobody faster than Tommy. He got pit strategy just a little bit wrong and made a slight mistake coming out of turn 2, self-spun on the apron down the backstretch. It ended his race, but guys, 3 cars went up there and they absolutely just made it look easy. They powered around those 3 guys on the bottom.
Yeah, once these guys got hooked up nose to tail, actually pushing each other, they're so much faster than the guys that are just riding in the draft, because the draft is essentially equaled out over all of those cars. It's distributed over all of those cars. They're essentially one big unit going through the air compared to these other guys that have gaps in between them, having some of that drag hitting the hoods and the roof line of their car and slowing them down a bit. So these guys shot way out there. The one thing that was really surprising was just how aggressive Tommy Gossett was. As we see him trying to take the lead here, he was pushing Dupre really, really hard, guys, and was kind of moving him around down the back straightaway.
Yeah, and just as soon as we saw him go to the outside, all those drivers now have ditched Isaiah Dupre. They're now following the rear end of Tommy Gossett. Now we've got another 3-wide situation out front. Up on the high side is still Brian Yasek being pushed by Scott Eckridge. You got Woody Mahan up there, as well as the 35 machine of Tim Weinkoff. And these guys were nowhere even remotely close to the front the last time we went by the start-finish line. And now they're all fighting for the lead. And look at this, Travis McQuistion on the outside here of Tommy Gossett. Brian Yasek's going to lead that last lap.
By the guys on that outside line, and it just shows you that if you get a line grouped up, everybody working together, you can be so much faster just in one lap. It does not take many laps to try to make a gain on the lead.
Almost a wreck. Tommy Gossett almost pushed Travis McQuistion very, very sideways. The two of them almost got together down the backstretch. Sorry, JR.
No, absolutely, Austin, and that's the one thing about these cars. Like we said earlier in the race, these cars drive very well when you're by yourself. They even drive pretty well when you're in a single file line, but when you start getting cars side by side and near each other, front to tail, nose to tail, these cars start to move all over the place. And one of the biggest areas that they can do that the worst is on the front straightaway here, the tri-oval section, right at the bottom of the track. It's very bumpy, and the car just wants to bounce around naturally by itself, but the air does it even more. So you're going to see guys have to really fight the wheels of these cars to keep them under control.
Well, Jared, let's try to put that in layman's terms for the viewers, right? It's kind of like if you're driving a big old minivan down the freeway, you've got nothing in the back at all. It's just you and maybe an infant in the back seat. You're going down the highway and you're passing a couple semi-trucks on a windy day. All of a sudden, you're driving along and the wheel starts to almost rip itself from your hands.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, and something that a lot of drivers have equated this type of racing to, so people can understand what it's like. It's exactly like that. The car has so much downforce, or van, whatever you're driving, has so much downforce when you're going down the road by itself. It's very easy to drive. You get behind a semi-trailer truck and the air just continually changes around you. It buffets off of your car. It moves your car side to side and around on the roadway. That's what these guys are experiencing, and they're doing it at 200 mile an hour, not at 70 plus like you would do on the interstate.
Yeah, at the rate these cars are going, this, 190 to 200 mile an hour, you go the entire length of a football field every single second. So when I say these guys are hauling the mail, they are absolutely flying around this 2.66 mile super speedway.
They absolutely are. So far, everybody has done a fantastic job making some of the big moves that we've seen, but continuing to stay clean. These guys have decided not to single file out. They've gone back to 2-wide racing, continuing to try things just to see how things might develop toward the end of this race and the moves that they might be able to make.
Yeah, certainly. There's been a lot of give and take so far. These guys have been very professional about pushing each other and using the draft to get around with one another and giving each other especially the room to make moves and get things done and kind of just learn how these cars are playing out. It's very nice to see this. Of course, later in the race, when the paint window starts to open, none of these guys are going to be giving. It's all take, and that's where those incidents start to happen.
Absolutely. The one thing that this lead group needs to watch out for is to absolutely make sure that they do not create an incident. If they do, there's a very good chance this entire lead group can be wiped out. We see the second group that's way behind these guys. They are all single file, running nose to tail, just keeping it clean, making sure that they make it to the end of this race.
Yeah, very much that Kevin Harvick, Carl Edwards approach from back in the day where you kind of just keep your nose out of trouble. You see Tim Weinkoff down on pit road. Kenny, is there any indication what this might be for? Is this he and Pete Baskins pitting for fuel?
Yeah, I would assume so, but it seems a little bit early to me. There's a few cars actually coming in, about 3 or 4 cars, 4 cars in the pit lane at the moment. Seems a little bit early to me, but I was about to key up and say that we are starting to approach the time when in about 5 laps or so, when the drivers who have not pitted yet will have to pit for fuel regardless. A few other drivers pitted on lap 4 and 5. They can go a little bit longer, and one of those drivers who pitted later is Cody Dempster. He'll have to make sure that he doesn't necessarily go by his fuel gauge, but he goes by the drivers around him and picks when to pit, because we said before, you need to have partners to pit with you. So if he can go a little bit longer than the pack, might not be the best decision to do that if he doesn't have anybody to stay out with him.
Yeah, right now the two sequential SimSport drivers down on pit road. That's James Moore and Christopher Duwald. They're getting their service right next to one another, so it's extremely easy for them to time their runs off of pit road. And talk about that from the driver's standpoint, JR. You go down pit road, you're doing the best of about 195 miles an hour. You have to then slow the car down to maybe 60, 65, and then make sure you do it with about 20 guys around you. And then you have to get in your pit stop, make a smooth pit stop, and then get off of pit road. Most importantly, though, time that well with your teammates and the guys that you pit with. Otherwise, you're going to be out there. Well, Christopher Duwald gets super sideways. That might hurt him in terms of losing his drafting buddy.
Yeah, absolutely, Austin. What we just saw with DeWalt there is the same coming to pit road. It is very dusty down there on that apron. When you come to pit road, it is so easy to lock up either the front tires or the rear tires. Either one is not going to do you any good. You're either going to slide through and speed down pit road, or you're going to spin that car out. So very tough to get this car slowed down efficiently, but still do it quickly. Once you're into your pit box, get your tires changed, get your fuel that's needed. When you come back out, you have to be careful, like we saw with DeWalt. Going through the gears, it's very easy for this car to spin the tires on that dirty surface.
Guys, Matthew Wheeler is having an absolute nightmare of a green flag pit stop. He missed the pit entry, went through the grass, totally missed the commitment cone, and he came in. I think he actually hit the inside wall a little bit in his pit stall, was able to finally get it stopped and take a service, but I think he's taking a penalty right now for unsafe pit entry and possibly speeding as well.
Oh, guys, yeah, James Moore is having to do the exact same thing. He's come back down pit road. He was just on pit road to get his service, and yeah, a stop and go penalty for Moore in the 21 car, excuse me.
There's a replay of Wheeler there, and Jacob Bruff was near him as well, and Bruff has sat in his pit stall for quite some time too, so I wonder if he was also speeding. And this kind of thing, these mistakes, especially if you're not, or well, even if you are pitting with a pack, these kind of mistakes on a green flag pit stops are huge. They just completely can kill your race unless you can get lucky enough to grab a caution before you go laps down.
Yeah, grab a caution or, of course, come down pit road with some lead lap drivers that'll allow you to draft with him. You can see the bulk of the pack right now coming down onto pit road. This is going to be very good for those drivers because they're going to have a line of people to build that momentum coming back off of pit road. But if you can, most of the time, if you can pit with only about 5 or 6 guys instead of like 10 or 15, that group of 5 cars is going to do much better because they can get a lot organized way faster.
Yeah, there's around 10 cars that came in this time, 10 or 12, and that's going to leave about 7 cars left out on the track that have not made a pit stop yet in this run. So we'll see all these drivers come out together. Cody Dempster was one of the first to come down. You see he's not quite going to lead the race off of pit road, and you'll see these drivers not necessarily race each other much, but be more focused on getting in a single file line and trying to string out together to have a nice organized draft.
Riding on board here, this is looking over the deck lid of Travis McChristian in the number 93 machine. He's been up near the front most of the day, so especially looking at him to come off pit road here, a clean pit road exit. You see Scott Eckrich really taking advantage of how much speed he knows he can carry off that the apron of the track. He gets right to the back of Travis McChristian and starts pushing him almost immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. That was Scott's plan. He knew if he could get to the back of Travis, these two could hook up and not lose a lot of time. You see, they're only out there by themselves, so their best effort is to be nose to tail, pushing each other hard around this track.
Another driver showcasing that it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Thank you, Trevor. Was Chance Manning in the 54 machine. He has changed up his usual gold and white car to now feature some pink and light blue. And look at this car from Justin Rector. This is very reminiscent to me of the car that Paul Menard would have run back in 2007 at the race at MIS. As he gets extremely loose there coming off pit road, JR. Like you mentioned, it's dusty down there.
Yeah, and it's not something that you expect because these cars do have the restrictor plates. You don't think you have the torque to really spin the tires coming through the gears, but obviously you do. And with the dustiness that is down there, the lack of cars passing through there, it is very, very slick, and these guys are finding that out. He did a great job to not hit that wall, but it could have ended his day for sure.
Another note for you Norm Pelletier fans, his connection is again dropped due to upload packet loss, so he continues to have some internet connection problems. We'll have to hope that Norm comes back into the race here. I want to take another look though at that Rector car, Trevor. That car, they ran those as a tribute to the 50-year anniversary of the old 57 Chevy. That's why he has those weird markings on the car. And yes, every single Chevrolet in the field did look like that. The weird little headlights, the chrome pieces on the hood, and the fins, and especially that grill on the front. They look pretty ugly. I thought so as a kid. I didn't understand what was going on, but looking back now, it's fun to reminisce about those times, Kenny.
Yeah, it definitely is. And one little side note here, 3 drivers have come in to make their pit stop just now: Isaiah Dupre, Tommy Gossett, and Rich Jetty. What's significant about that is they're pitting here 33 laps into this race. This is a 94-lap event. These guys may, if we stay green, which we very well might not, but I do want to bring up the case if it does, they might be able to stretch it on fuel to be only a 2-stop event, whereas the rest of these drivers most likely will have to pit a third time just a few laps before the finish of this thing.
That's a great point, Kenny. And those 2 drivers pitting this time by is, of course, going to give the lead back over to Travis McQuistion, who's being pushed right now by Scott Eckridge. But he's going to have a huge challenge here. Brian Yazik on the outside being pushed by Woody Mahan. And here those 2 drivers that just came out of the pits, that's Dupre and Gossett. They're going to be just passed on the outside by these guys.
They're going to want to hope that they can stay hooked up with these guys at least to the back of the pack. It looks like their speed is starting to equal out. They're able to maintain in the middle of this group, so they've done a good job with their round of pit stops to not lose this group as they come by.
And the driver at the back of this pack here, that is James Moore. He had to actually come back down pit road. He either had a pit road speeding penalty or an unsafe entry to pit road. He had to come in and serve a stop-and-go penalty. That's why he's so off sequence from the rest of the field. He is currently 1 lap down right now, holding on for his life to try and make sure if we do get a caution, he can get that lucky dog award and be put back on the lead lap.
And there's actually quite a battle going on for that free pass spot because Jacob Bruff and James Moore are basically side by side right now. So that's a very equal battle for that free pass position.
Man, Woody Mahan just gave Brian Yazik the push of a lifetime. He got him completely clear here of Travis McQuistion on the inside. So right now I'm looking at, guys, the best pushers in this race so far. I think it's got to be Moore, Eckridge, and then Mahan. These guys are just really good at slowly getting up to the rear end of a car and just ever so slightly giving them a super long push to just kind of elevate them to the front of the field and kind of give them a gap back to the rest of the pack.
These guys continuing to push each other and work together. Like you said, there's several guys that are showing that they are great pushers in this race. Everybody is taking note of that. That's who they want to work with ultimately in this race. Brian Yazik continuing to lead this thing. He's had the best seat in the house so far. As long as he can avoid people getting to his inside or outside, he can ensure that he's not going to get caught up in the big one.
Yeah, you can see the old MC editing squares on the back of Yazik's car. Yazik was always his main sponsor, and then he switched to this new Yaz's Sandwiches Shop car, and he has just been on fire ever since then. He kind of floundered a bit with the debut of this car, and then he won back-to-back races at Michigan and Richmond, Michigan being his home track. And like I said, I mean, he's basically got a 50% win ratio with this new Yaz's Sandwiches Shop scheme. Of course, MC Editing Squared, they're the main sponsor of tonight's event. They always go the extra mile to take your document across the finish line, just as Michael Krobach hopes to do later in this event here. First, of course, whether it's a resume, cover letter, grant proposal, article, article, or content for your website, MC Editing Services will help you stand out from the crowd. For a free quote for PGRL fans, you can contact prettygoodRacingLeague@gmail.com. MC Squared leading the way in editing services. You can see that's their guy right there, Michael Krobach. He's, of course, sponsored by MC Squared Editing Services. And, of course, there is an award that they put out, too. It's issued to the driver who's led the most laps on the season. So pretty good deal for the driver that does that. Usually the guy that beats the most laps is one of the most dominant of the season.
So before these pit stops occurred, we had about a 20-car or so draft. And now, after those pit stops, it's been basically reduced to 10. Exactly 10 drivers are in this lead group here. And another pretty large group is next behind them. But basically another 10-car group. And essentially they're kind of trading lap times. That second group lately has been actually the faster of the two, probably because they're not really racing. They're basically sitting in a line and just kind of drafting with each other, whereas this lead pack keeps changing lanes and racing amongst each other. So we'll have to see if that second group ends up slowly catching up to the leaders. Right now they're being led by Christopher DeWald in 11th.
Up at the front of the pack here, it's still Travis McCushion out front. Oh man, Mike Rasmus must have got really loose there going into turn one. He went all the way down on the apron, and JR, he's going to have to be really careful here that crack of the throttle having to correct the car doesn't force him to lose this front draft.
The jeopardy of doing that, we've seen with these Gen 7 cars, once you get so far behind and you are the last car in the pack, that it is very easy to lap after lap lose that draft. He looks like he's continuing to fall back here, so if he's not able to see that lead group do a little bit of a checkup and allow him to catch back up, he may have to fall back to that second pack.
Yeah, that second pack, by the way, Kenny, I think he's mentioned it a couple times. They're about the better part of 9 seconds behind, so that is a long distance for Rasmus to fall back in order to catch back up or even have a chance of drafting partners. It looks like, though, for right now, he will be able to latch onto the back of this lead pack here. Still being led for the moment by Travis McCushion on the inside and Tommy Gossett on the outside.
Yeah, he kind of got lucky with that one. I was wondering if he was going to be able to stay in that group. Looks like he is able to get back up into that draft, and I wonder if that was maybe just kind of a bump draft gone wrong at the wrong time, or if Rasmus just got sideways by himself. But that is one thing you want to kind of avoid, at least me personally, from the driver's standpoint. I try to avoid getting right up to the back bumper of another car, at least in the early going on corner entry or in the middle of the corner, because it's just, these cars are just so twitchy and light at that point of the corner.
Yeah,
3 wide this time by. Go ahead, JR. Almost 4 wide.
No, absolutely. These guys starting to mix it up. And,
Tommy Gossett got wrecked in front of half the field there by the number 7 car. They're wrecking all over the place as they head into turn 1.
Yeah, absolutely, and that could have been a blessing in disguise for Rasmus. That put him behind that accident in a place to where he could avoid it. He may have been right in the middle of that.
Kenny, I don't know if maybe he thought he was clear, but this is, of course, riding on board here with Thomas George. We're looking at that blue car that's just on the other side of the car ahead of Thomas, that being Adam Jersky. You can see that he just makes contact there with the number 80 car, Tommy Gossett. Maybe we can see if we can view this from Jacob Ruff's point of view. This is riding on board, looking over the hood here of Adam Jersky. You can see Ruff just barely, ever so slightly turns Gossett at these speeds. There's no way to get back off of Tommy and correct the car.
Yeah, I mean, if we can look at, here we go, this is the view we want here. This is actually a little more contact than you might think. Bruff actually, he comes up and he, I just don't know why he doesn't check up his run. I'm not sure if he was trying to give Gossett a push and just kind of didn't line up right, or if he, he almost looks like he's kind of hesitant as to going left or right, but then he also goes right after contact. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but luckily other drivers weren't involved in that. Well, not many more anyway.
All right, Travis McCushion looks to be the main driver with contact in that incident. Thankfully for Mike Rasmus, he was able to check up just in time and avoid making any sort of contact with Tommy Gossett. But boy, this is the second week in a row. Kind of heartbreaking there for Tommy Gossett.
It absolutely is, and he was one of the guys that was trying to mix it up the most. He was making the most aggressive moves through the pack. unfortunately, the wreck wasn't even something that he created there. So, yeah, just a little bit unexpected. I kind of expected something to happen potentially where he had created that with one of his big moves, but that just was not the case.
That'll give James Moore, I believe, the free pass as long as iRacing doesn't claim that he was involved in the wreck, because I did notice right as the caution came out, he actually scraped the wall, completely unrelated to the wreck, but hopefully iRacing will be nice enough to give him the free pass anyway. But here we see the entire field coming down pit lane for some pit stops. These will be full service, and some drivers might not be a whole lot of in a whole lot of urgency to get out of their pit stalls. You see Brian Yazik looks like he's one of the first drivers to come out. I think Travis McQuistion actually beat him off of pit road, and McQuistion's been pretty strong so far today.
He certainly has. He's been one of the best guys to either be pushing or leading, especially that inside line. This, of course, break in the action gives us a fantastic opportunity, though, to talk about some of the sponsors and things we'd just like to talk about here tonight. The first of which being Hollow Valley and Sequential SimSport. Those two are teaming up to help generate money to fight against breast cancer from now until next Tuesday, October 11th. So you guys got a full 7 days at 9 p.m. Eastern. Anyone who makes a donation of $1 or more than $1 to www.nationalbreastcancer.org and sends proof to either Hollow Valley or Sequential SimSport will be entered to win a free shirt from both Hollow Valley and Sequential SimSport. You can also, any viewers of this channel and of course this race, can email proof of your donation to prettygoodracingleague@gmail.com, and they can also pass along your proof of donation. So just really got to be thankful to Hollow Valley and Sequential SimSport, and of course PGRL for being helpful to make it as easy as possible for you to make that donation, and of course send your proof of the donation off to help enter you in that opportunity to win that free shirt. So pretty awesome to basically buy a shirt for $1, or of course if you want to donate more, you're more than welcome to. Every single dollar helps in the fight against breast cancer. We'd also like to take a second to thank MC Editing Squared. They're the main proprietor of this broadcast. We'd like to thank them for their sponsorship of it for today. MC Squared Editing Services always goes the extra mile to take your document across the finish line. Whether it's a resume, cover letter, grant proposal, article, or even content for your website, MC Editing Services will help you stand out. For a free quote for all PGRL fans, you can contact prettygoodracingleague@gmail.com. MC Squared leading the way in editing services, and they're, of course, obviously the main sponsor of Michael Krobach. He drives the MC Squared Editing Services car. There's also an award they do. They have the Leading the Way Award at PGRL. Of course, that's issued to the driver who leads the most laps on the season. We'd like to thank them for their sponsorship of tonight's broadcast.
So this kind of takes a turn here with pit strategy. We're about not quite halfway through this thing, with about a 30-lap fuel run that these drivers can run. It's pretty much going to make strategy, the only really question about the strategy at this point is just when do you make that last stop. It's going to be a one-stop strategy from here on out for fuel, but the window is going to open up pretty much around lap 65-ish, about 20 laps from now, and you just have to make sure you kind of have your dancing partner ready to go if we get to that point where we have green flag pit stops. And you might see drivers really stretch it out and try to run the full extent of their fuel. You might see other drivers pit immediately so that they have time to reorganize and get their draft going amongst their group in order to get back to the front.
And JR, it's so important to try and stretch out your fuel, and not as much at this track as it is at some others, thankfully, because this track is, of course, better part of 3 miles long, being at 2.66. But, if you do come down pit road, you're not completely hosed in terms of going 1 or 2 laps down, but it'd be a lot easier if you had a dancing partner. Of course, if the caution comes out after you've made your pit stop and others haven't, you could be completely hosed from that standpoint too, because now you might risk being a lap down or more. You can get the wave around, but that's pretty tricky too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's risk versus reward. Some of these guys that haven't been up front all night may try to do that strategy and pit a little bit early. You do take the risk of going a lap down, but it may be worth it. The one thing to pay attention to when we do have that round of pit stops occur, we did see some of these guys, only 2 or 3 cars come down together instead of a large pack. Those 2 or 3 cars were very efficient during their round of pit stops and were able to get back in front of that group. So could see a lot of strategy happen if we can get a green flag run to the end here.
Green flag back in the air this time by. My eyes are going on to that bottom side right now. You got Travis McQuistion leading the inside row. Then you've got Woody Mahan and then Scott Eckridge. The 2 cars behind Travis McQuistion have more often than not been the best pushers in the entire field, but you got to be very careful too. Yazik has had quite the fast red and white Yaza Sandwiches car shop on the top side, and he's right now leading the top line with Isaiah Dupre just in behind him.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing about the caution coming out, it will change the tempo of this race. Will we see guys start to get single file back out and ride till they get further into this race, or are they going to go hard? A lot of guys are going to get excited and try to race now that this whole pack is back together.
Right now, it looks like that top side especially is trying to race Brian Yazik there. Got a huge push from Isaiah Dupre, and now he's 3 or 4 car lengths there. The entire top line is, of course. They're all clear of Travis McQuistion, who gets extremely loose. And, whoa, I don't know how these guys didn't wreck.
Oh,
nope,
they're
they're wrecking behind him.
I was just
Oh,
about
they're
to
still wrecking.
I was just about to say Tommy Gossett was flying back through the field even with a damaged race car, and then got caught right in the middle of that wreck, and I'm not so sure he'll have a drivable race car, at least competitive one, after this one. This is the kind of the first big one of the night.
Yeah, there were a ton of guys just wiggling all the way up and down the track in the tri-oval. I'm not sure where this one started. It looked to be about 4 cars doing a synchronized spin. I know for sure it happened up there at the wall. We're going to be watching for Tommy Gossett and Jordan Harnish, and then there was another Patriot Media car involved in this one too.
Yeah, there was a few cars that got really loose. I think it started with Woody Mahan. He got really twitchy in the middle, kind of went up the track. And it was kind of a chain reaction behind him. So you see there's Mahan, and about 2-3 rows back is where the actual wreck ended up happening. A few drivers got out of shape, and Cody Dempster, a contending driver, week by week ends up nosing into the fence and then gets smacked by the 80 car a second time as the 80 car was rolling backwards. But there you see Woody Mahan there kind of getting loose. And right there you see Gossett getting into the car in front of him. That kind
Yeah,
of sets
Clarence
off.
Bonner. That might have been. I think that's the root cause of this caution. I think that whole stuff between Mahan and Thomas George. I think that sort of upset Pete Baskins, made him want to try go around this thing. And as soon as Bonner saw Pete Baskins going up the track, he tried to do that too. But I think it was Tommy Gossett. He just got to his outside a little bit too late and put Clarence into the wall. And then as soon as that happened, I think Tommy tried to get off of him, and there's just carnage after that.
And there's Harnish involved as well. And you see the 83 car coming in and the
Oh man,
35.
Joe Alberico, yep.
Well, you know,
Even
Alberico didn't.
Christopher Duval got a little piece of that. And oh man, now he got it. Yeah, Joe Alberico. He stayed out of it for the longest time, and I think whoever was behind him might have been Jacob Bruff. Yeah, light blue car just barely tags him and sends Joe for a spin.
Looks like Chance Manning just lost connection to the server as well. Not sure if he was really involved in the wreck, but regardless, he is disconnected.
This is riding in forward with the 83 car. Joe Alberico, you're going to see the wreck happen on the top side. He's going to check up for it right now. He's going to get tagged from behind and go for a spin. Yep, there he goes.
And it just shows how quickly things happen. I mean, he did a really good job locking it down and checking up for the initial wreck, but it's just when people accordion up like that, it's really difficult for everybody to get stopped in time.
Well, it's especially hard too. These drivers don't have spotters like they do in real life to say, well, there's a wreck 5 cars ahead of you. You can only see 1 car ahead of you, and that's sometimes maybe 2 looking through the windows of these cars, but it's still very hard. This is riding up board with Jordan Harnish, and boy, we've all been there. You hear cars wrecking, you think you got through it, and bam, you get tagged in one of the quarter panels.
You see, he might have right front damage there, and that might be day over for Harnish.
Yeah, that might be terminal damage for him. At least 11 minutes there with that right front suspension. I'll wibble wobbly like that.
So JR, what do you think the mentality is after, after a big one happens like that? If you're a driver that made it through, but there's still quite a bit of racing to go, is that kind of increasing your anxiety as far as, the racing around you, or are you thinking, okay, there's been some attrition, I can maybe be actually more aggressive at this point? What's the kind of the thought process after you've experienced a big wreck like that moving forward?
Yeah, you would absolutely think that guys would want to settle in and calm down a little bit on the next restart here, but um, the nature of a driver is to always try to race and go hard, and you may have the intention of calming down and riding it out, and then as soon as the green flag drops, you get back to racing. It's just natural to do that as a driver. So, yeah, I think you're going to continue to see some guys race hard and some fall back. There's going to be different philosophies like we talked about. Some of these guys are going to see this as a warning of the big one that is yet to hit, and they are going to try to go to the back of this pack and ride, and others are going to try to be out front and make some aggressive moves to get there. So, unfortunately, I don't think that we are over with having wrecks. Like Austin said earlier, cautions breed cautions, and we're probably getting ourselves set up to see a few more here.
This, of course, is race number 7 out of 12. This is, about that late to mid part of the season where your real championship competitors up and down the field all really start to emerge, and you kind of know who the fast guys are. So far, they're up near the front of the pack. We've only got a couple races after this. Next week, we're going to be at the Charlotte Roval, half road course, half oval. They nicknamed it the Roval. It's kind of a Frankenstein. It is one of, if not the hardest tracks on the iRacing service. We're going to be doing 55 laps, green flag around there. It's going to be awesome. So far, we're set to have Vincent Crow up in the booth with us. He'll be there in real life, so we'll be able to get some good insight from him. Then after that, we go to Las Vegas to do 134 laps there, and then we have the High, Wide, and Handsome 200 at Homestead. It was always the last race. It's been moved around the last couple of years, and then we go back to the roots of NASCAR, the short track of Martinsville Speedway, and then, of course, we wrap up this season and the entire 2022 PGRL calendar year with the MC Squared editing services leading the way 250K at Phoenix Raceway. And Phoenix is, ever since they redesigned it, I didn't think it was going to be good, but that track is much racier than I can ever remember it being in these last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely is. It gives the drivers a lot of options, especially through that dog leg area to try to make some crazy moves going into what is now turn 1, used to be turn 3. So, yeah, it's created a lot of passing opportunities and a lot of good hard racing there.
iRacing pace car has pulled itself back down pit road, gives command of the field over to Brian Yazik. To his outside, he's got Isaiah Dupre. Usually it's not who's leading the lines, it's who's second in these lines. Brian Yazik's going to get a big helping push here from Jonathan Cogswell. And behind Isaiah Dupre, it's Adam Jersky in the 71 car. It's all going to depend who gets lined up first here. Adam Jersky is the first car to get up to the rear end of the person ahead of him. He should be able to give a pretty good push here to Isaiah Dupre.
Yeah, he's trying to. They got a little offset there. It looks like Jonathan Cogswell is actually going to do a better job staying attached to Brian Yazik and continuing to push him out front. Yazik's going to move to the top side of the track, feeling that the momentum is going to be better up there.
Now, Kenny, these guys continue to get close to each other and then far away, especially side to side. What are these guys doing? Is that side drafting?
Well, I really haven't seen a whole lot of aggressive side drafting, but a little bit of it is just a general wavering back and forth, just from these cars just being really twitchy and getting pushed. It's kind of hard. It's kind of an art form, really, to be able to keep the car straight when you're getting pushed. But yeah, as this race drags on, you will start. Oh, we got some contact and another car sideways.
One car hard in the fence on the outside. Yeah, John Wilco.
Yeah, that won't be a caution though. But Wilco had hard contact. That will probably do him in. Anyways, going back to what you were talking about, we will start to see some pretty hefty side drafting later on in this race. But sometimes you'll see cars move side to side just to kind of get better visibility. Other times they'll move out if they need to get some clean air or cool air on the front of the race car if temperature becomes a problem. Yeah, it's a constant snake, and no driver really keeps the car perfectly straight all the time.
Thanks for that last camera angle there, Trevor Greenfield, our director. It's always nice to see what kind of car John Wilco, paint scheme rather, that John brings to the racetrack. He's never driven the same looking car twice this entire season. It's always super neat to see what John shows up to with, and that car looks awesome today. Super reminiscent of the Looney Tunes rematch car that Jeff Gordon drove, and I want to say 2002. So I'm digging this car, but yeah, John Wilco always brings super cool paint schemes to the track. Another Jonathan Cogswell, currently out up at the front of the pack, right now being pushed. I think he's getting, pretty good push here by Michael Krobach.
Yeah, absolutely, and that 28 paint scheme is absolutely a scheme you want to see out front here at Talladega. So reminiscent of what Davey Allison drove and won in his first race here. So great to see that car leading this pack.
Yeah, part of the old Alabama gang. It was comprised of Davey, his dad Bobby, and a couple other very infamous drivers. Well, I shouldn't say infamous, famous drivers. You got Neil Bonnet in there, Donnie Allison, a bunch of old super fast guys, all from, of course, in or about Alabama. They formed the Alabama gang, and I believe the backstretch here is nicknamed the Alabama Gang Backstretch too, or Super Stretch rather.
Absolutely, Super Stretch named after those guys. A great group of guys that have so much history in this sport that continues to be what NASCAR is today. So great to have that recognized each and every time we go here.
And Jonathan Cogswell continues to get big pushes here by Michael Krobach. These guys working super well together. And Kenny, I feel like a lot of these guys at the end of this race, in terms of who you want to be, kind of paired up with for the last couple laps in terms of, being a pusher or a pushee. These guys are kind of spoiled for choice. There's a lot of drivers out here that really know how to work well with the draft.
Yeah, and a lot of Fords up towards the front. The whole top 5 and into the top back half of the top 10 is just filled with all Fords at the moment for whatever reason. A lot of these drivers have been good up front. Drivers like Yazik and George, they've been up front, and Christian, they've been up front all race long. We haven't really run into that case yet, although there's quite a bit of time left to go. You always tend to see at these races someone kind of show up at the very end of these. One of the drivers that might have run in the back for a while, but so far it's been pretty much the same kind of group of drivers up front for the majority of these laps.
Yeah, it's always sort of a Kevin Harvick reminiscent of his Daytona 500 win in 2007. Hadn't led a lap all day, comes off of turn 4. Good old mister, where did he come from? Kevin Harvick stole that win. Could it be someone else stealing the win here today? There's been a lot of guys up front all race long, kind of getting up there, mixing it up at the front of the pack. We've had a ton of different lap leaders, but there's been, of course, a rare few drivers that have been up there for multiple laps leading. Guys like Brian Yazik, Jonathan Cogswell, Travis McQuistion. We've had multiple drivers up there. Pete Baskins, just kind of, they get up there, and when they're up there, they stay up there.
Yeah, absolutely, and those are the guys that you want to work with because you know they are more than likely going to be up there at the end of this race. That gives you the best shot for a good finish, but also the shot to try to win the race yourself.
Now, Kenny, I'm going to pass this next question on to you. Usually when you and I run these plate races, sometimes we tend to stay in the back of the pack and try to avoid the big one if there is one. We see a lot of guys there in that second pack, guys like old DRJ, Don Runkle Jr. You got the 4-car, of course, of James Kahula. You got Django Matthews, Cody Dempster, lots of guys, Tim Weinkauf. We haven't really mentioned them a whole lot this race. They're all back there in that second pack. They're going to have cars at the end of this race, but if you're one of those guys, are you worried that you really haven't been up there mixing it up with these drivers up front to really know how your car is going to handle with all this turbulent air around it when it comes down to like 5 to go?
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, I am definitely the kind of driver that wants to get up in the draft and at least experiment a little bit with the handling of these race cars, because in practice you don't really get a huge opportunity to run in a big draft very much. And on top of that, these drivers have to have a caution. There's absolutely no way that they're going to catch this pack by themselves here at this point because they've dropped too far back. Usually if I play the drop behind strategy, I still try to be in the lead group. I just try to be kind of where Don Runkle Jr. is there at the very tail end of the main draft, but still in the main draft nonetheless. You drop too far back and you're really playing a lottery game and hoping that there's a caution. I really don't like playing that bet.
Oh, big wreck starting to happen on the back straightaway here, guys.
Oh, Adam Piersky hard down on the apron.
Yeah, Adam Jersky kind of became a pinball there. I'm not sure exactly what happened to create that, but he kind of bounced off the outside and inside wall and other cars coming around him.
Well, yeah, looks like Jersky kind of, I think he got a little bit of a bump from behind by McQuistion, and that forced him down into the car on the inside, which was Rector, and that just shot Jersky back across the track. He pinballed back and forth a few times, like JR said, and ended up hitting Cubanik, and they ended up spinning that wreck. Another wreck that could have been a lot bigger. So we can take a look at the replay, and Mike Rasmus did a really nice job after getting doored there by Jersky to keep his car under control and continue on. I guess this makes me concede that I guess it was a good bet for drivers like Krahula to end up running in the back. Here we go as a replay there. There's Jersky. We're actually going to rewind it
We
here.
could maybe get a blimp view here as well, or a chopper camera, just so you can see. I mean, it's 3 wide back here in the back of the pack, and it is super hectic. Yeah, this is perfect, Trevor.
Here we go. You see the white car there in the middle. He gives a little bit of a bump to Jersky, which sends him to the left, which pushes him into the 03, and then slingshots him back across. Here's Rasmus there, gets hit in the side. We're interested to see how much damage he has on his car. Back into McQuistion, and then once again, Rasmus comes down trying to regain control of his own car, hits Jersky, who spins down into Cubanik, and they both spin to the inside. Relatively low damage wreck, considering the high speeds and how many cars were involved. But again, it'll reset the field here, and I still do not think these drivers are in their fuel window at this point. So we'll have to, everybody's pitting at this point right now, and we'll probably have to come back down once again for another splash.
Kenny, to your point, I don't think these guys are within their fuel window to the rest of this race, and I don't think they're out of their wrecking window for the rest of this race. There's still a lot of racing to go on before we get this thing wrapped up. Still about 36 laps to go before we throw the checkered flag and call this race final. One thing these guys don't have to worry about that the drivers would have to in real life is green-white checkers. In PGRL, if we raced the scheduled race distance and that's it. So you don't have to make sure you've got enough fuel in the car to make sure you can go another potentially, 9 or 10 laps longer than you would normally need to just to complete the old 94 laps, Kenny. I know we've done a lot of these plate races where you do have to worry about that, and it's always like, well, technically you can come in right now and have enough gas, but if we have a green-white checkered, I'd prefer we have another gallon or two on board.
Yeah, and that really changes the total racing mentality, because if you get to when you have green-white checkered, you can really race up until the white flag, because that's when you finally know it'll be official. So you can do whatever you want up until that white flag lap. Whereas if you don't have a green-white checkered, you're kind of racing until about 3 to 4 laps to go, because that's the point of no return. So it really kind of changes mentally how you approach these last few laps, because you really need to make sure you're up at the front really before that white flag lap, because if there is a caution at the end, race is official.
The race off pit road, Django Matthews currently scored as the leader. So we'll have to see how this whole thing shakes out once we get closer and closer to the lights being shut off from the iRacing pace car and see who comes out with the lead. But this is going to be really interesting to see who works together towards the finish of this race. You can see the pit stop strategy on the right-hand side of your screen. You can see a lot of the drivers have just come back down pit road there. Some drivers have stayed out a little bit longer. And yeah, Django Matthews looks like he might have stayed up to lead that lap. Of course, you do get a bonus point, so now Django's going to go back down pit road. He's one of those drivers similar to John Runkle Jr. and James Kahula. We haven't really talked about them all race, and that's kind of one of those drivers. They can come out of nowhere and steal the win if these guys that have been up front all day long really aren't careful when it comes down to the end. Tim Weinkauf, another one of those guys.
Looks like Jordan Harnish and Drew Carroll going to take wave rounds. They're both multiple laps down. But this is actually going to leave Brady Cure as the leader. He had some problems early on, and he is staying out at the moment, and we have 1 to go till green. So he will be officially leading this thing when we go green once again. Jacob Bruff tried to take a wave round, unable to do so because of Brady Cure staying out. But and also Tommy Gossett once again able to get the free pass, and he'll be back on the lead lap once again.
Yeah, he continues to be a luck boy. Brady Cure, though, I mean, talk about the recovery from Cure. You know, he was the cause for caution for our first one. Spun out, got a little bit of damage on the right-hand side of his car. He continues now. He's really just flipped his race around. You see Tommy Gossett go for quite the slide in the infield there, just trying to give the car all the beans he can on the apron, and just goes for a little bit of an adventure there through the infield grass.
Yeah, Gossett here just trying to catch up to the back of the field, who is on the back stretch. He should be able to catch them within plenty of time. Him and Isaiah Dupre, Adam Jersky, there's some of the drivers towards the back portion of the lead lap. 26 drivers on the lead lap. 2 of them are 1 lap down. That's Jacob Bruff and Chance Manning. And then 1 driver 2 laps down in Matthew Wheeler.
Lights are out atop the iRacing pace car, so we are going to get the green flag to go this time by. So the iRacing pace car is going to make the hard left turn here in just a couple seconds. He'll give command of the field here over to Brady Curie. He's got Jonathan Cogswell to his outside. Woody Mahan is third. Mike Rasmus is fourth. Scott Eckridge fifth. Michael Krobach in sixth. Thomas George 7th, Brian Yazik is 8th, James Cahool in 9th, and Justin Rector currently in 10th position. This is riding on board here with Jonathan Cogswell. This is what he'll be seeing outside of his windshield here. He's the car on the outside, the first car up there. Leader, of course, Brady Cure down to his inside.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, guys. We see Brady Cure take off. If people are going to be willing to work with him, he has not been up front so far in this race. The rest of these guys have been, so we'll have to see how they approach this going through turns 1 and 2 and whether or not they try to overtake him.
Yeah, Jonathan Cogswell kind of got more of a Jeff Ward, Mark Webber start there on this restart. You can see he continues to fall back through the field. The first driver behind him, Woody Mahan, just went ahead and ducked down to the bottom. And look at these guys. They're going to just freight train Brady Cure here on the outside. It's Woody Mahan, then Mike Rasmus, Scott Eckridge, Thomas George, and now Jonathan Cogswell looks to the inside. And just behind him is going to be Michael Krobach looking to give him a push. See the bulk of that high line there, that freight train Brady Cure. They've now gone to the inside line here. It looks like they're going to leave Thomas George out to dry. Just behind them, you see Brian Yazik giving a big push here to Justin Rector to try and make this split pack into one larger one.
Yeah, these top 8 guys have pretty well single-filed themselves out right now. Brian Yazik's on the outside with Thomas George trying to get something going here, but they're going to have to get a few more cars in line with them to try to get that outside working once again.
See these packs actually. Oh, we have a wreck off of turn 2, guys.
Whoa, 2 cars hard off the track. We'll see if they make contact with the inside retaining wall. Looks like one of them did, as I Dupre is one of them. Not quite sure who that other car is. It's really hard to tell from this distance. Maybe Travis McQuistion. Still no caution, though. Those cars wrecked off the racetrack down on the apron. That's where they spun around, so we're still going green flag here.
It was the 58 car that spun down with him.
Oh, Matthew Wheeler.
Yeah, one of the lesser experienced drivers in the field. Just kind of a bump draft gone wrong there off of turn 2. We're looking at the replay here, and this pack was already losing track position compared to the lead group, as we do have another caution on the racetrack.
Geez, that was just an insanely fast spin there to throw both those drivers off the track there down to the apron. We'll have to see what this cause for caution is for.
So it looks like the 80 car again, Tommy Gossett, I'm not sure. It looks like he got turned by the 35 of Tim Weinkoff, and then Rich Jetty. Not sure if he ended up hitting the 80 car or not, but he ended up spinning as well.
This is going to be a replay here. Once again, fantastic shots here from our director and producer, Trevor Greenfield. We're looking here at that 80 car. That's the white and red machine, just ahead of the completely red machine there. That's Tommy Gossett. See him getting a bit of a push here, an offset push there by Tim Weinkoff. And Kenny JR, that's been what we've seen most of the problems be here tonight. That guy just gets an offset push and it sends him around.
Yeah, it looks oddly familiar compared to the last time that the 80 car got spun.
Jacob Bruff that first time.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Right here, this is where Jetty comes by, and yes, they do make hard contact.
Yeah, you can see Rich Jetty. His car got upset by that so bad he continues to spin. Tries to save it from the outside wall, just gets that car rotated. Just barely, if he doesn't tap it, is just barely a kiss.
Yeah, unfortunately for Jetty, he's got right rear suspension damage, breaking one of the control arms there. So he's going to have a hard time trying to get that thing repaired. We'll have to see how much time he has to spend in the pits here.
Usually that's been the equivalent of at least maybe about 8 minutes down on pit road to fix one of those. So we'll have to see what it's like for him. But Kenny, lots of guys now considering going down pit road. We're kind of on the edge of our fuel window here.
Yeah, I think that if I'm on late lap at this point, I'd come down to pit road and hopefully we can get a good green flag run to the end. And it would be interesting. It'll be pretty close on fuel, but they're at least getting to the edge of that pit window at this point. Looks like Clarence Bonner might be staying out at the moment. Tommy Gossett is staying out at the moment as well. He might be coming in next time by to repair some damage. But yeah, right now so far, Bonner has stayed out by himself. So you see there the race off pit road.
Sometimes, too, it's important for those drivers that want to stay out and maybe go an extra lap. They can lead a lap. They also get to pit later than everyone else, come out at the back of the field, kind of give themselves a break in the action. Speaking of a break in the action, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back, though. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Chuckles. I'm in Danger 250, presented by MC Editing Squares. You're watching the Pretty Good Racing League on the Virtual Grip Network. MC Editing Squared is an editing service that always goes the extra mile to take your document across the finish line. Whether it's a resume, a cover letter, grant proposal, an article, or content for your website, MC Editing Services will help you stand out. For a free quote for all PGRL fans, you can contact prettygoodracingleague.com or it's prettygoodracingleague@gmail.com, MC Squared leading the way in editing services. MC Squared Editing Services is, of course, the sponsor for Michael Krobach, and they also sponsor, of course, the Leading the Way Award in PGRL. That, of course, goes to the driver that leads the most laps on the season. We're here on lap 65 of 94. We've had about 4 or 5 cautions to this race so far. Most of the drivers, though, have been minding their P's and Q's, and it's largely been a green flag race. It's just every now and again you get some net code, you get a wrong push. A couple of drivers go spinning. Before you know it, we have another caution. That, of course, makes everyone flock down to pit road. We think the drivers, Kenny, are to their fuel window.
Yeah, we actually had a lot of drivers come in that last time by. You see them all coming out off the apron there. Came down and topped off on fuel. So really Cubanik, Cogswell, Cure, and Bonner are all the drivers that did not come in and do that. Bonner actually dropping to the back, possibly intentionally, but he did not come in and pit at all under this caution. So he's got quite a few laps less of fuel than everybody else. But yeah, 1 lap extra of fuel for everybody except for the top 3 right now, which it doesn't sound like much, but if you can just have a cup of fuel at the end, could be the difference, because we are pretty much right on the fuel window.
Yep, the amount of races that get won by one driver maybe not having a lap of fuel or a half a lap, even just a quarter of a lap, consider a tiny teacup of fuel basically all you need to basically separate yourself from, the joy of winning to just the harrowing, that bad, awful feeling of defeat at the end of one of these races. You can see iRacing pace car pulls down pit road this time by, gives command of the field over to Jonathan Cogswell. He's got Jimmy Kubanek to his outside, everyone else behind him, forced to take an EOL because they came down a closed pit road to go ahead and top off on fuel. That's why you see this strange pacing lineup as we get ready to go back to green. Green flag flies in the air. I'll be really interested to see how these guys kind of sort themselves. Whoa, one car spinning already. That's Jacob Ruff off the front end of Scott Eckridge.
Yeah, and that's more than likely not going to bring a caution. Oh, it does. So I guess he stopped close enough to the racing surface. The caution is out.
There's actually a separate, well, not separate, but another wreck that stemmed from that. Travis McQuistion went spinning, and a couple other drivers ended up hitting the wall because they were all checking up after that. I actually wonder if it was a messed up shift by McQuistion that spun him across the track as he was trying to get going again.
That white car up at the top of your screen is Travis McQuistion. That's the number 93 machine. This is the first instance that we talk about. You see that dark, blue and black car at the bottom of your screen. That's Scott Eckridge. You can see just barely comes up the track as Jacob Bruff in the 7 car comes down. That sends Bruff there into the inside wall. And then, Trevor, if we could go look back at that white car, that Travis McQuistion machine in the 93. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, different car. Way deeper in the field.
Yeah, so here is McQuistion. He's just trying to get going again, and he approaches Don
Might have
Runkle
been a
Jr.
missed shift by old DRJ, Don Runkle Jr.
Well, watch McQuistion here. He doesn't hit Runkle at all or anything. He just kind of comes up to him, and then you'll see him just randomly get sideways here. Here he is, and there, just he breaks loose, and I really think that was probably him going through the gears. And like clockwork, there's the 80 car, gets some more contact for his troubles. And then behind him,
wreck today. Goss's been in it.
yeah, and then Alberico ends up being involved. You see him sliding there. I think Bonner was involved as well.
Kenny, I think what I was trying to say, I think Don Runkle Jr. might have missed a shift, and that, of course, made cars kind of flock around him on the high and the low side. And then, yeah, I think he hit the nail on the head, though, with that Travis McQuistion. I think he did just done something weird on the shift to go ahead and break the rear axle loose. And it's really hard to save the car when you're doing it. These guys got to be doing about 120 mile an hour right here.
Yeah, there was just that single file restart, like what JR brought up, was just a really weird deal. And I think some drivers might have even thought that the caution was going to come out with that initial spin. So some drivers might not have been as urgent as others trying to get up through there. And it was a really messed up restart. It won't be that way this time, because I don't think you'll see a bunch of drivers pitting under a closed pit, because now we're definitely in the fuel window. But yeah, just a very unfamiliar situation for everybody.
As the drivers pace under this caution, we're going to take another commercial break and be right back after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Chuckles I'm in Danger 250, presented by MC Squared Editing Services. We're here at Talladega Superspeedway on lap number 68 of 94. Currently, your leader is the driver of the number 88 machine, Jimmy Kubanek. We just came off of a very weird restart where we were forced to go under caution almost immediately after having 2 separate incidents on the front stretch. Before we'd even completed another lap, we think that every driver except for Jimmy Kubanek and maybe Jonathan Cogswell is good to make it on fuel for the rest of the race. We'd like to start off, though, by bringing you guys back to coverage with thanking our sponsor for tonight's race, MC Squared Editing Services. They always go the extra mile to take your document across the finish line. Whether it's a resume, cover letter, grant proposal, article, or content for your website, MC Squared Editing Services will help you stand out. For a free quote for all PGRL fans, you can contact prettygoodracingleague@gmail.com. MC Squared, leading the way in editing services.
Lots of stuff going on here during this caution. We've had Adam Jersky lost connection, but he has regained that connection. We'll see how much time he loses. We've seen most drivers lose about 1 lap to that. McQuistion is out from that crash damage. Gossett is now out from crash damage, and Brady Cure got DQ'd.
Interesting to see that there. I'd also like to give another shout out to Hollow Valley and Sequential Sim Sport. Those two are teaming up to help generate money to fight breast cancer. From now until Tuesday, October 11th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, anyone who makes a donation over $1 to www.nationalbreastcancer.org and sends proof to either Hollow Valley or Sequential Sim Sport will be entered to win a free shirt from both Hollow Valley and Sequential Sim Sport. So pretty good deal there. You get a free t-shirt basically for the cost of a $1 donation. And viewers, of course, of this broadcast, if you do make a donation, you can even send proof of that to prettygoodracingleague@gmail.com, and they'll pass it along for you. These guys really do everything they can to help you guys out and help out charity too. So pretty awesome deal there for them. You can see a couple of drivers up and down the field tonight. I have some pink decorations on their cars to help raise awareness of course, October Breast Cancer Awareness Month. You're going to see all the cars in the NASCAR Cup Series race at the Charlotte Roval this weekend are going to have pink window nets to try to raise awareness too. And you might see some other cars with some pink stuff on them as well, kind of just different than the normal. Chance Manning is one of those guys. You've also got James Moore, one of them. Christopher DeWald is one as well. A couple different guys up and down the field here putting pink on their cars. I think even JR, you and I talked about running some pink numbers in the Bootleg Racing League Super Late Model races. You can catch those, by the way, every single Saturday night on, of course, the Virtual Grip Network. Those races go live at about 8:50 p.m. Eastern Time.
Well, the field at this point reduced to 24 cars on the lead lap. You have 3 1 lap down, which are, well, Wheeler, and then Gossett and McQuistion are both out of the race. So it's going to be Wheeler by himself on a lap on his own. Adam Jersky back in the race, 2 laps down, and he's kind of locked into that 28th position at the moment, and will gain 2 spots next time by, but he's on a lap by himself. But again, the leaders kind of mixed up here as we go green, approaching lap 70.
Yeah, iRacing pace car goes down pit road. I'd asked the guys in the driver chat here how many cars they thought would finish. I said, what's the over-under on cars running at the checkered flag? Michael Krobach popped up and goes 17, so we're still on track for that number. Might need a couple less guys to be running here before the checkered flag for Michael to be corrected. Would it be interesting if he was the winner and also won the over-under here on cars left at the start? You see Jimmy Kubinek, he got a really good start here. Jonathan Coxwell on the high side, kind of lagging back right here, but we'll see if he can get a push from the driver behind him. Right now, that of course is Scott Eckrich. Oh, Scott's going to duck out from behind him here and force Jonathan into the sucker hole. He's got a pretty good push here, Scott does right now, from Thomas George in the 6th car on the high side. And then just behind him, they've got Brian Yazik.
Yeah, some really fast guys lining up in that outside line. They're going to try to work together through the end of this race with 25 laps to go here. But we do have some guys making some moves up the middle. Nobody to help them, but that could create some issues here.
Yeah, that's going to create some issues, especially if they start ping-ponging around each other. And guys, a couple cars up at the front we haven't mentioned being up there all night long. You got James Kahula, DRJ, Don Runkle Jr., you got Tim Weinkauf up there, and even Justin Rector. So lots of guys that have been hanging out at the back of the pack all day. They've finally decided it's go time. And look at this push that Scott Eckrich has just got from Thomas George here. They're about 4 or 5 car lengths clear of the low side. The first 5 cars now all up on the high side. They're all clear of the drivers on the low side.
Yeah, they had formed up on that high side and were working really well together, but their goal is to not be side by side with anybody. They want to get out in front so they can move from the bottom to the top. Wherever the momentum starts to transition and move toward, they'll be able to move up in front of it.
Right now, you've got Michael Krobach. He's the first car on that outside line. Right now, he's getting a push here from Cody Dempster. Then he's got the 28 car, Jonathan Cogswell, behind him. And then you got James Kahula. And Kenny, talk about, you've been racing up front here. If you're Scott Eckridge or Jonathan Cogswell, you kind of know who's been up front all day long. Do you necessarily take a chance and go with these guys that have been riding around at the back of the pack all night long right here?
Well, I do think there's kind of a clique of drivers.
Oh, Jonathan Hardish got super wiggly there, Kenny. Sorry, I thought he was going to wreck for sure.
It looks like we do stay green, but that little group back there, everybody behind him is going to kind of check up, and a small group of drivers have actually lost some ground in the pack. But going back to your question, there is a little bit of a clique of drivers who have clearly been working together. Yazik, George, and Eckridge, who have kind of stuck with each other, but they trust each other week to week. And JR, I'd like to ask you this one. These drivers, a lot of them are competing against each other for the championship, but yet you see them a lot of times working together in a race like this, probably because they can trust each other week to week, and including this situation. But it's just kind of an interesting dynamic, because in the end, you're really fighting for every last point against them, but yet you're helping them in this situation.
Yeah, that's the unique thing about plate racing. You see it in real life. Guys that have had issues with one another actually end up working together because it's convenient, or because their particular cars are able to work so well together and get them out front. And that's what happens here. You will work with guys that you trust. You will work with guys that are fast, even if you don't necessarily like giving them room in other races, but you will do it here because it benefits both of you.
I mean, just from a point standing perspective as well, if you can both finish around each other, you then carry that same kind of distance from one driver to another on to the next race, or maybe not in some Talladega, but it might be more skill-based, like a Phoenix or a Las Vegas.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can get by with Talladega, not losing any points to the guys that you're racing for the championship, it is a good day, because that takes you to the tracks to where you as a driver can potentially make a difference for those points.
Right now, it's Michael Krobach out front, Scott Eckridge behind him, then you got Thomas George, and then Brian Yazik just behind him. So currently up at the front, three of the top four guys really do have two good hands held on to this championship fight for the moment. You got Mr. Consistency, Mike Rasmus, behind him. We call him Mr. Consistency, but he hasn't made all the races up to this point in the season, so he's kind of, not to say eliminated, but it's going to be really hard for him to win this championship. He's going to have to hope for some bad luck from the other drivers, and maybe some missed races. But just now you see Brian Yazik tried to duck out from behind the 6 car. He's now getting a pretty good push here from Isaiah Ducre.
Yeah, Isaiah is starting to line up behind Brian. They're trying to work that outside line. They have several cars that are lining up behind them. Mixed bag of Chevrolets, Toyotas, and Fords in that lane, working together to try to get something going here, to try to overcome what that inside lane has been able to develop. The inside lane has been really tough the last few laps.
Yeah, Scott Eckridge had pushed Michael Krobach out to about an 8-car length lead after Brian Yazik got out from behind Thomas George. That kind of stalled out the two of them, and this most recent push from Dupree to Yazik caught them up by the entire 8-car lengths, and now they're dead even as they cross the start-finish line this time by. We've got about 19, 18 laps to go.
Yeah, and you can see as we went across start-finish line in there, guys really starting to be aggressive with their pushes. You're seeing cars start to move around more and more, even on the straightaway where that push is coming in a straight line. So these guys are getting very aggressive. You can see the cars start to move around down the back straightaway as well.
And Kenny, this is where you need to be talking to the guy that you're either pushing or being pushed by to say, hey, you don't look in your rear and push me. I'll set myself up behind you, because then you got two drivers just basically, driving off of each other. And sometimes it works out well. Sometimes you both zig and zag at the wrong time and you wreck half the field.
Yeah, it's really key that these two, if you're going to partner up with a specific driver or specific group, that you all stay on the same page. And generally you try to kind of go where the lead car decides to go, but at the same time, you kind of, you want to kind of premeditate those moves, go, hey, I'm going to stay in this line for a little bit, or, just kind of watch out for me making moves. But the key thing there is, to keep cars as straight as possible. That can help you generate the most amount of momentum possible and help allow for a lot of pushing. You see the 86 Dupre really giving the business to Yazik up on that top side, trying to get Yazik up to the lead.
Yeah, it's taken everything Dupre and Yazik can put together right here to overcome the kind of pushes that Scott Eckridge continues to give to the 72 car. Michael Krobach up front. Scott, said it earlier on the top of the broadcast. He's one of the best pushers. Yazik is one of the best leaders. So Michael Krobach proving he's a really good leader of the line as well.
Yeah, definitely he is. And, with Scott Eckridge behind him, like I said, one of the best pushers that have been in this race so far. That's who you want behind you. And I'm going to say, guys, we still have 17 laps to go, but we do know that these PGRL races could potentially finish under caution if there is a late wreck on track. Normally you see these plate races come down to last lap passes. I'm not sure that you can count on this being a last lap pass. You may need to make your move 3 or 4 laps to go in this race.
Yeah, to your credit, JR, I think Kenny mentioned that same thing earlier on at the top of the broadcast is you can never really know when this race is going to finish. There could be a caution that comes out anywhere inside of 5 laps to go, and that's the race. It's official. Checkered flag's practically thrown at that point. It's just basically, you kind of follow the pace car in a lap, ring around the circuit until you're done. It's basically just, a procession formality.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And, hopefully for us, the race stays green the entire way, because with 3 or 4 laps to go, we're going to see some big moves happening, guys trying to get that lead just in case a caution comes out. And if we stay green, that'll be some great, great racing all the way to the finish.
Certainly will. You continue to see Scott Eckridge all over the rear bumper here, Michael Krobach. These two guys know how to work well together. Isaiah Dupre and Brian Yazik continue to fall back through the field. Now Dupre is all of a sudden ducked out from behind Brian Yazik. And look at James Kahula and Adam Jersky. They're now going to try to form a third line on the absolute top side of the track here.
As the laps continue to count down, these guys are going to get more and more aggressive. We could see 3 wide racing coming to the end of this when guys are forming up those lines, like you said, Austin. The third line starting to slowly get piled up. It looks like a lot of guys are pulling out of that right now, thinking it's too early to make that move.
Yeah, you saw a lot of guys go up there and say, hey, if Yazik's going to go up there, he's a good leader of a line. I'm going to go up there and follow him. And as soon as Yazik decided to go back down to the inside to kind of take that second line, everyone else kind of went with him, and that third line kind of dissolved. So maybe Brian Yazik kind of acting like Dale Jr. We always used to call him the Pipe Piper at these tracks. Oh, man, look out. Brian Yazik just behind those guys. He's behind Cody Dempster and Isaiah Dupre. Those two almost got really sideways and wrecked half the field.
I think that was Dupre who had a massive wiggle there, and he's not able to get down to the bottom. Yazik's going to kind of dump him off here, get down to the bottom, but that's going to really cause the top 10 or so to be single filed out. I don't expect that to last long, as these drivers are going to get around a lap car that's on the apron. Nice sportsmanlike move by that driver to stay out of the way. But yeah, this is now a 20-car draft, and none of these drivers are really wanting to drop away.
Oh, man, you can see on your screen right there that bright yellow car had to back up and almost force that bright blue car, the number 7 car of Jacob Ruff, into an accident there.
Look, that's actually going to cause some separation in the draft now.
Oh, this is everything that those front cars wanted to see, and not something Brian Yazik wanted to see at all.
Yeah, not at all. But if these guys get grouped back up, they are going to close in fast on that front group. You see the front group actually breaking apart a little bit. That's going to slow them down and give the advantage back to the group that Yazik is leading here.
Yeah, for right now, it's the first maybe 11 or 12 or so cars right here, single file. Brian Yazik decides to stick his nose up there on the high side. Right now, he's still got that momentum. We'll see who's going to help him. For right now, I think it's Adam Jersky giving him a push. It's really hard to see from this far out. Yeah, it is Jersky in the 71 car.
And Yazik has proven to be kind of the number one.
All over the place here.
He's the number 1 leading car thus far. We've seen Eckridge be kind of the most sought-after pusher, and Yazik be the most sought-after leader. And here he comes trying to make a charge up. He was unsuccessful last time around, trying to lead that group up to the lead. We'll see if he can do it this time. And Jersky's all over the back of him.
Yeah, Jersky, just those two cars are connected right now. They're going to almost break even here down the backstretch. They've caught up to Scott Eckridge, and just right here, right now, they've caught even with Michael Krobach as they go down the backstretch.
Guys, that's the one advantage that these Fords have over the Chevrolets and the Toyotas is that their front ends are flatter, so they're able to connect a lot better and push for a lot straighter down these straightaways when they connect.
And these new cars, it's even harder for some of these machines because now every single rear bumper on these cars is completely rounded, and I cannot believe we didn't just see a crash. That was Tim Weinkauf, Jacob Ruff. They just doored each other coming off of turn 4, and both those guys kept it together. I didn't see a wiggle.
Everybody making some big moves here. They're getting back into double file formation at the moment, but every 2 or 3 laps we see guys get their momentum cut off a little bit, and then guys get big runs from behind. Everybody trying to dive out and make something happen here as we're coming to 10 to go this time by.
And Adam Jersky giving Brian Yazik a huge push as they go down the back straightaway. Both those cars now going to be completely cleared. Oh, Jersky's going to dump Yazik here. He'll go down to the inside and leave Yazik out on the top side.
Really what it's going to come down to is who do you want to work with and for how long. And drivers will be very unpredictable with that. Some will try to stay right behind somebody all the way until the very end and then pop out at the last second.
So now Adam Chersky on the low side. Brian Yesick now, he gets put in the sucker hole in the middle of the racetrack. 3 wide right here. Isaiah Dupre up top. He's got old DRJ, the 00 car. Don Runkle Jr. behind him. And then Tim Weinkauf, that 3rd car at the top side.
Definitely. Brian's going to try to look for somebody that he can work with that's going to be willing to stay with him a little bit longer and be a little more patient than what he has had so far. He's fallen back a little bit. Dupre continuing to lead that outside line with Don Runkle, pushing him slightly out in front.
Isaiah Dupre getting a really good push here. Yeah, JR, to your point, by Don Runkle Jr. Tim Weinkauf behind him. And whoa! That's Adam Jersky. He must have gotten loose off the front end there of Michael Krobach. He goes down to the apron. That allows for Isaiah Dupre to come down, and Kenny is on pit road.
Yeah, he was actually...
Michael Krobach might be wrecking here.
Yep.
Yeah, Jersky actually was not even on the lead lap. He was 2 laps down and probably had to pit for fuel. He's actually not going to take service here because of the caution. And it looks like, Krobach has got some pretty bad damage. A little more contact there with Kubanek. But this will make us re-rack him and have a restart here with less than 10 laps to go.
Yeah, it's usually about 4 laps for a caution. This is the cause for caution here. We'll see if we can't. Perfect job there, Trevor. Aerial shot here, slow motion. You see Krobach just getting offset there from the 86 car of Isaiah Dupre. And then he goes up the track, makes some netcode contact there with Brian Yazik. And then comes back down the track, hits Mike Rasmus there. He wrecks Kubanek.
There comes Christian.
Yeah.
And how lucky is Yazik that I think he's going to get away with no damage. I think he just netcoded right on
Wheeler, too. He was already a lap down. He was going to get the lucky dog this time by, but unfortunately, he was involved in that incident. He took a really hard lick down to the inside safer barrier there of the track. So unfortunately there for both Kubanek and Mike Rasmus, those guys, odds are their days are done. This is another replay of what happened. This is running on board of the hood here at Mike Rasmus. Wow, yeah.
Fast drivers involved in that one, and it's going to really cause a lot of anxiety here for the next restart because like you guys said, we're going to be right in that kind of danger zone of if we get another caution, it's probably going to be just about done for this race. So yeah, I got some different drivers up in the front too. It looks like at the moment Weinkauf has
DRJ, Isaiah Dupre, even James Kerhula. James Kerhula this week, all week, he was talking about being done for the season after this race because he didn't want to be out there kind of, being involved, negatively affecting somebody's championship. And, he might not even affect the championship adversely by putting some championship points in between 2 championship title contenders. He could just go up there and get all the points for himself. Wouldn't this be awesome for him?
Yeah, this has changed the complexity of this race and who's going to be out front. It's given a lot of guys some big opportunities here. We're only going to have probably 4 or 5 laps to go when we go back green, so definitely going to be a big charge. And like we said, these races could finish under caution. We may only get 1 or 2 laps in, so it's going to be very important with who gets that lead on the restart here and is able to have somebody help them to maintain that lead down the back straightaway.
We're going to take advantage of this caution, kind of this calm before the storm. We're going to take a quick break. Why don't you guys go to your fridge, get out something to drink, maybe a snack or two before we come back here to wrap up this race. We'll be right back.
This is the world's premier online racing simulation. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat from your home computer with the most realistic online motorsports experience you'll find anywhere. Race virtually in the world's biggest events with officially licensed series, cars, and tracks. From the high banks of Daytona to the blistering speeds of Indianapolis, the dirt of Eldora to the world's most legendary road courses. It's all here, and with more than 180,000 people just like you already driving, you'll always have someone to race. Ready to get behind the wheel? Sign up at iRacing.com to get started.
This is iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in endorsed series from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, Aussie Supercars, and more. Take on legendary circuits like Daytona, Silverstone, and the Nürburgring. Join iRacing's global online racing community and get on track today at iRacing.com.
Welcome back to the Chuckles I'm in Danger 250 presented by MC Squared Editing Services. You're watching the Pretty Good Racing League on the Virtual Grip Network. We're just inside of 7 laps to go here in this 94-lap affair. We're under our most recent caution here, and there are no green flag laps, so the race could be official after this one. I'd like to take a moment here before we go back to green flag racing and thank our sponsor for tonight, MC Squared Editing Services. They always go the extra mile to take your document across the finish line. It doesn't matter if it's a resume, a cover letter, an article, a grant proposal, or any sort of content for your website. MC Squared Editing Services will help you stand out from the rest of the crowd or the field if you're Michael Krobach. Unfortunately for him, down on pit road after the most recent caution. It involved him. He ping-ponged around in the field. He's back down on pit road, so it'll be a pretty hard hit for him in the point standings. For a free quote, though, you can go to contact Pretty Good Racing League. If you're a fan of the PGRL, you can contact Pretty Good Racing League at gmail.com for a free quote. MC Squared leading the way in editing services. For right now, we've had a lot of guys up at the front of the field, namely 3 out of the top 4 were kind of riding around in the back of the pack all day long. Brian Yazik, your championship leader, as we come into this race, he's still looking to hold on to that championship lead. Tim Weinkauf is first. DRJ Don Runkle Jr. in the 00 car is second. Isaiah Dupre is third. James Kahula fourth. Brian Yazik in the 55 car in fifth. Scott Eckridge sixth. Thomas George is seventh. Cody Dempster is eighth. Pete Baskins is ninth. He's your pole sitter. So Pete started up front, looking to finish up there too. Woody Mahan currently rounds out the top 10. We've had a lot of crazy finishes here in the past, guys, especially at these plate tracks. Looking to see another fantastic finish here today.
Absolutely, Austin. It's very cool to see Tim Weinkauf and Don Runkle Jr. up front for this restart. Unfortunately, on the inside row, you have Isaiah Dupre and Brian Yazik. I think those two guys are going to hook up along with Thomas George here and try to make a run. You also have Scott Eckridge on that outside line. He may try to work with Krahula, so I'm afraid this front row might be a little bit of a sitting duck here.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens. I'd be really careful, though, to make sure that Scott Eckridge doesn't pair up with one of his LPM teammates like Brian Yazik and kind of just allow those two drivers to scoot away from the rest of the field. And, of course, if there's a caution from this point on, that's going to be the entire race. Green flag flies in the air once again. Tim Weinkoff on the inside, DRJ on the outside. James Kahula looks to get up right to his back bumper. And, man, look at Scott Eckridge. That high line gets formed up extremely well. The two cars on the inside are sitting ducks. And look at DRJ, he goes down to the inside. They're swerving all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. Big moves happening here, but Scott Eckridge is going to push Kahula out front before he tries to make a move himself. Want to make sure that he gets that lane clear. You see Yazik making a move 3 wide.
Yeah, Yazik goes up to the top side. He's got help with Woody Mahan here, and just behind Mahan is the 6 car, Thomas George. If they're still going to make a move to the outside, they're dead even here with the cars on the inside being Kahula and Eckridge. Coming off of turn 4, they're dead even. Advantage right now just barely goes to James Kahula on the inside in the 4 car. They're going to cross the stripe this time to get by to get 4 to go.
See Thomas George, he's going to move down into that inside line, give that line a little bit more momentum. That outside line's breaking up just a little bit. They're going to have to get back formed up before we get down to the closing laps here.
Oh, look at DRJ. He goes up to the high side trying to take that momentum. Hopefully someone goes with him. Right now it looks like somebody is. Right now that somebody is the 6 car of Thomas George. He's looking to go back-to-back here and win 2 races in a row. James Kahula all over the place. He's now going to come up in front of Scott Eckridge, or come down rather, and get a huge push here from the 70 machine.
Yeah, great race, and it's going to come down to who makes a move when. You see every time somebody moves from one of the good lines.
Upset.
Yep, everybody moving around here. Lots happening. There's a lot of movement, a lot of pushes that are happening, and people are going to start to move around even more than what we've seen throughout this whole race.
Yeah, George gave Runkle a really big push right there, upset the car, but he's going to come out victorious here in terms of this lap by. It's going to go to DRJ. Watch out for Kahula, though. Oh, Tim Weinkoff super loose, and now George goes down to the inside. A squeeze there from Runkle Jr.
Yeah, very close, almost contact going down in there. Kahula's getting a big run here along with Scott Eckridge. They're going to continue to push George down the back straightaway. That inside line's looking strong on this lap.
They're going to have to be really careful, though, those front 2 cars, that they don't get too separated from the rest of the pack, because Scott Eckridge is going to get a big run here. He could easily take all that run from the momentum he's going to get and go around him.
Yeah, definitely. Scott Eckridge knows what he's doing. He's trying to set up for the end of this race. You see everybody getting very nose to tail, beating and banging through the center of this corner.
Super sideways in the middle of turns 3 and 4. Now John Runkle Jr. looks to the inside. He's going to make the pass here on the 6 car, Thomas George.
Absolutely. Everybody knows this race can end at any moment. The next flag will end the race. Big wreck.
Kahula spins around. It looks like Thomas George is going to win this race.
Yeah, it does. Brian Yazik looks like he's going to be in 2nd place, and behind him maybe Pete Baskins.
Yeah, Pete Baskins had a huge run up on the top side when these drivers started banging off each other. He went to the top and just slung around him and came up in 3rd place. He actually had more momentum carrying him, but then the yellow came out.
Adam Jersky with some pretty heavy damage on the front end of his car. For right now, Thomas George should be your winner. Wait until it's just a formality to go ahead and complete the rest of the laps here tonight. We'll wait until iRacing's timing and scoring makes it official for us, but it should be George from Yazik, from Baskins, from Eckridge, and then more. This is a replay, though. This is going down the front straightaway. You're going to see that James Kahula tried to make it to the inside of DRJ, and I think Scott Eckridge just tried to continue to give Kahula a push.
Yeah, and I think it was just a bad timing of things, because right about the same time Eckridge gave Kahula a bump, Manning gave Eckridge a bump, and just kind of it pushed Eckridge into Kahula at not the right angle or position that he wanted to. Hit Kahula right in the corner. You see here right there, there's the shot from the 54. At the same time, hitting the corner of the 4, and everybody was moving around quite a lot. You'll see these drivers start wrecking here. A lot of net code in this race tonight, but a lot of these drivers kind of pile in. You see Eckridge is able to get on by. A couple other cars get on by. Weinkoff down at the bottom. But Kahula was one of those drivers who ran. Oh, nice avoidance there by the 86 car. That was a good job. But Kahula was one of those drivers that was running in the back for so long, and hadn't really gotten the big pushes from Eckridge all night long until the very end. And to me, he didn't really seem 100% comfortable on that last run.
Well, I think he just tried to barely look to the inside there of the 00 car, DRJ, and as soon as he tried to back out of the throttle because he knew he was going to get cut off, Scott Eckridge didn't know what was going on. He gave him a huge push from behind and knocked him sideways. The cars this time by should be getting the white flag. We're going to take a quick break and let iRacing timing and scoring sort everything out. No, that was a checkered flag. So we're going to take a quick break, let iRacing sort everything out. Sometimes things are weird after a finish like this. That was as crazy as it is. And when we come back, we're going to interview the top 3 drivers, go through the finishing results, and wrap up the show. Don't go anywhere, though. Welcome back to the Chuckles I'm in Danger 250 presented by MC Squared Editing Services. You can see winner and defending race winner from last week, Thomas George. He goes back to back, winning this last race and tonight here. So Texas and Talladega, the 2 T races for Thomas J. George. Brian Yazik finishes second. He continues his strong championship run, and thankfully for those 2 drivers, the point distance between them stays pretty close. Pete Baskin started in first. He'll finish on the podium, so he'll get to talk to us one more time before the end of the show. Old DRJ sat in the back of the pack all day long. He comes home to finish 4th. Scott Eckridge started dead last down the field. He'll come back to finish with a solid top 5 run. Christopher Duwald finishes in 6th, followed by his teammate James Moore in 7th. Tim Weinkoff finishes in 8th with Isaiah Dupre in 9th, and Jonathan Cogswell rounding out your top 10. James Cahula, another one of those guys that sat in the back all day long, almost had this thing figured out to win the race. Unfortunately for him, he's going to have to settle for 11th. Mike Rasmus, Mr. Consistency, falls a little bit off today here at the plate races, but I'm sure he'll be back next week. He finishes in 12th. Django Matthews finishes in 13th, followed by Harley Moss in 14th. Justin Rector finishes in 15th, followed by Jacob Ruff in 16th. Cody Dempster finishes in 17th with Joe Alberico and Chance Menon finishing in 18th and 19th respectively. And Woody Mahan rounds out your top 20, JR.
Yeah, coming home in 21st tonight, we have Adam Jersky. Finishing 22nd is Clarence Bonner. 23rd place goes to Jordan Harnish. 24th, Michael Krobach, who led a lot of laps tonight, running up front for a good portion of that race. 25th place goes to Jimmy Kubanek. 26th is Matthew Wheeler. Gossett. 29th is Travis McQuistion. 30th goes to Rich Jetty. 31st, John Wilco. 32nd place will go to Norm Pelletier. 33rd goes to Greg O'Berry, and 34th place will go to Brady Cure, who I believe will be on pole next week if he chooses to race at the Roval.
Of course, JR alluding to the fact that each race's finishing positions, we invert the field, and that determines the starting order for the next race. Of course, we do have our winner for tonight's race and the winner from last week, Thomas George. The J stands for back-to-back wins. Thomas, you've got to be elated.
Did that just happen?
I think it did. I mean, I consider pinching yourself for right now, but ouch, yeah, that hurts. So I think it's real life.
I'm flabbergasted. That's the Talladega sweep this year. That's something I didn't have pinned down for this year. Holy crap. I got nothing, man.
I think this is the first time we've talked. You've been genuinely speechless. This is the kind of stuff we live for, to see a driver just go out there and win a race. You go back to back. This has got to be huge. You know, your win last week, you closed up quite a good amount of points up to Brian Yazik, currently the championship leader. This is only going to help you. Now, granted, he finished second to you today, so this doesn't help as much as it did last week, but you still got to be pretty happy with this run. And, of course, chipping away at that point lead.
I mean, it definitely helps, and switching to this number 6 is. I think there's some good luck going on with it right now. I'm shocked.
At Talladega, at least, we're split on the 2 versus the 6, but this has got to be pretty good momentum for the 6 car going into the rest of the season.
Yep, we just we got to keep performing well, keep doing what I've been doing, and that's what we did. That's what I did tonight. I knew we had a shot there, and as much as I wanted to push Don to the win, because I've known him for a long time, I'm racing Brian, and for a championship, if I had a lead on Brian, maybe by like 20 or so points, I'd still probably be going for the win, but I'd also consider pushing Don there. But I mean, and this, you got to do it right now with how close the points are, and it looks like it's coming down between me and him as far as who's going to win the championship. And we're both at the top of our games right now, and we're basically going back and forth. But I think I got more wins than him this year right now, but he's got the bonus points of leading laps and everything like that. And I mean, it's tough. We're both as good as each other right now, and we're just trading blows essentially. And go to the Roval, that's going to be interesting. Not my favorite track, but I mean, we'll do what we can there and try to get another really good result. I'm just back-to-back wins, basically stealing them in the last couple of laps. I mean, I'll take any win I get. It don't matter how many laps I lead, as long as I lead the last one.
Yeah, you mentioned that kind of momentum, and it's going to continue to carry on. Maybe you can go 3 for 3. But Thomas, as you wrap up tonight, who do you have to thank for your 2nd win in a row?
Just you guys are putting on the show, the admins, Sirius XM. I had the playlist playing while I was racing, because this track can get boring and you're just wide open more or less. Ford, everybody's watching. Ash, appreciate you congratulating me there. I know it's things are weird right now. Yeah, just I don't know, man. I'm trying to put the thoughts together, and I can't quite do it. But hey, we won, so that's all that matters.
It's all good, brother. Thomas, congratulations on your win. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. And JR, I think you've caught up with Thomas's rival in the championship so far, Brian Yazik.
Indeed, I have, Austin. Brian, man, congratulations on that 2nd place run, having to come from 17th on the starting grid tonight. But you pretty much led a big portion of this race, or at least led one of the lines that were up front most of the night. So talk us through your strategy. Obviously, it looked like it was trying to stay out front as much as possible.
Yeah, no, that was pretty much it. Because if you're out front, you're away from the carnage and the chaos. So that was kind of the goal, and with how the points are kind of heading, and having me and Thomas and Michael all kind of really on top of each other. I think we all kind of had the same strategy of, well, if we get up front, we could lead laps and get bonus points and try to lead the most laps. That was my goal. I don't know if I got it. I guess we'll find out, a little bit later on. But all in all, it was a great night. I should have been dead when Krobach spun back up the track. Somehow my car just ghosted through it, so I'll take that. 9 times out of 10, just to be able to keep going on. But yeah, it was all about just kind of trying to stay out front and keep this 55 in the lead, and especially towards the end. I was hoping that we were going to get one more lap out of it, or at least, maybe run it to checkers would have been perfect, but because I had Thomas shoved away, and then it was just me, him, and a couple other guys, and who knows where it would have gone from there. But I had a plan. It's just late caution kind of ruins it, but it is what it is.
Yeah, we had mentioned that coming to the green flag there at the end, that there was always the possibility that this race could end under caution, the next flag ending the race essentially, and not knowing when you needed to make that move. How frustrating is it as a driver, such as yourself, that was doing so well in this race, being able to lead the packs, having guys work with you all night, but not yet knowing exactly when to make that move?
It's it's kind of like driving at night with no headlights. That's kind of the easiest way around it, because you have a general idea of where you're trying to go and the mission that you're trying to get to. But like I said, you don't know. We don't do green-white checkers, and that's probably a good thing for a place like this, which works out real nice. It's kind of the inherent beast of restrictor plate racing. It's going to be what it is, and there's not restrictor plate racing anymore. Sorry, but it just kind of is what it is, and we're happy to finish second, but it sucks that the guy that was chasing us in points won the race.
Right, yeah. Fortunately for you, you did come home in second place, and with the bonus points, maybe it'll even out, or you'll come out slightly ahead. So keeping yourself right there, continuing to lead the points at this part of the season, talk us through how you're feeling about the next week's race at going to the Roval in Charlotte.
Roval, I got some good feelings about. Really the end of the schedule, I don't have any complaints. Martinsville is kind of a wild card, just because I've had good runs and I've had bad runs. But at Roval, I feel like, rolling off the truck, we should have top 5 speed. Starting towards the middle of it might be a little bit chaotic, but there's a lot of us that are going to be in that same boat. Vegas is a good track for us. Homestead's good. Phoenix has always been a good one too. So, looking ahead, kind of Martinsville being the variable, I feel pretty good. It's still calm. There's still a lot of racing to go this year. So it's you can't really put buggy before the horse. When it get kind of down to it. So we're just going to kind of take it race by race and play the situation as the situation can play out for us. I mean, there's only so much that we were in control of, holding our steering wheels and our pixel race cars. So it's just a matter of doing the right things, making the right decisions, and getting to, putting yourself in that opportunity to capitalize, steal a top 5, steal a win, steal a podium. When maybe things go bad for some other people, and that's the little stuff that adds up throughout the year. And that kind of mindset has put us where we're at. And we're just going to kind of keep going at it race by race and run it out, see where we end up.
Absolutely, Brian. We look forward to watching you race each and every week, and continuing to put on the effort you have so far in this season. Before we let you go, man, who would you like to thank for tonight's run?
Obviously, shout out to Yazzie Sandwiches and More. That's Mom and Dad's business. They are closed for the season now. Once it starts getting cold, they say, yeah, we're done doing that. So we had our company outing, company dinner over the weekend. So that was nice. Sim racing apps, I wouldn't have any of the data that I'd have or get to where I would be at without them. Jeff Gilliam and it's a fantastic program. Go out there, get it. Simracingapps.com. It just gives you so much information at your disposal, and you can use it, as big or as little as you need to. Graphics for coming up with just a beautiful paint job for this, clipping that Apex. Longtime sponsor, MC Squared Editing Services, Mike Probach. Sucks that he kind of got caught up in that one, but it's Dega. There's not a whole lot you can do about that. Joy of Driving. Mark Cohn, kind of miss having him around. Wish he'd get back in the cockpit, but and thanks to you guys for broadcasting us every week, and everybody here at PGRL, Loud Pedal Motorsports back in the shop, and we'll just keep on trucking down the road, guys.
Well, we appreciate you, Brian. Congratulations on that second place run, and hopefully we'll talk to you again next week.
Hey, that's the goal.
All right, that was Brian Yazik, our second place finisher in tonight's race. With that, I believe Kenny has now caught up with third place Pete Baskins.
I have tonight's one of the feel-good stories tonight, Pete Baskins. And Pete, we talked to you earlier, and we were, obviously we were optimistic of how anybody could run this week, but you kind of rode around, played a really smart race, held a straight, pretty wheel all race long, and you came home third place. That's got to feel almost like a win to you, being the first top 5 of the season.
Yeah, thanks guys. I really appreciate it. This is kind of, I don't know, it's just a really good feeling to finally pull something together. And I wanted to try and hang out at the back at these super speedways this year. It just hasn't always worked out, and then kind of make my way to the front. All the cards, all the stars aligned for this one. I don't know. It's just a great feeling.
And talk about that strategy. We saw you, kind of hang in the back, actually lose the lead draft for quite a decent amount of time. But then once we started to get some cautions, we saw you kind of hang at the back of the lead pack. But did you have kind of a lap number in your mind of like, this is kind of the lap that I want to, kind of start to go for it?
Well, after I lost that lead draft right there, and I knew it was gonna have to be a caution. Like after the pit cycle went through, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be another Daytona, or one of the tracks earlier in the year where it's been caution free almost the whole time, and ended up finishing way at the back. But once all the cautions happened and some of the top contenders started falling out, I'm like, well, I'll hang at the back because I know there's probably gonna be a big one like normal, and sure enough, some of those happened. But I just kind of rode there, and I was thinking in my head, 10 to go. I wanted to start moving because I knew that we don't have green light checkers here, and anything under 5, the race is pretty much over. So we got that lucky yellow right there, and from there I wasn't gonna let up after that.
And the last 2 cautions, basically everybody behind you wrecked, and coming to the that final wreck there, drivers were bouncing off of each other, and you had a heck of a run off the top side, and I was curious to see if maybe you could have actually kept that momentum going, actually challenged for the lead on the third line that nobody really was doing anything with there up until the last second. But on that final restart, did you have any kind of dancing partners or drafting partners in mind? Any communication between teammates or anything like that going on?
Yeah, I had my teammates sit behind me. We had 24 right back there. Cody was doing really well, and then I had 35 was there all race. So Tim did a great job, and we had been working together towards the back there and kind of just riding at the back for the last 20, 15 to go, knowing when we wanted to go, and we just kind of got split up right there. So once I was there with Cody, I kind of just wanted to keep going, and I also knew I had my old teammates from LPM that I trusted, and I was gonna, if my guys got left out to dry, I knew I could stick with them, and they'd be good to go there too.
Well, it's good to see 2 Michiganders on the podium this evening. I didn't realize I live about 45 minutes away from you, Pete. So who would you like to thank for the good run tonight?
Let's see. Well, yeah, it was great having me and Brian up there representing Michigan. I would really want to thank everybody at Patriot and Grant, and I mean, he brought me on this year to let me race, and it's been an up and down year. I really, honestly, I didn't think I'd be going this far. This is obviously it's a brand new car to everybody, but it's just kind of a lot different for me. I'm used to running truck races in Xfinity, so. But yeah, I just want to thank all my teammates too. They helped me get to this point. They've known I've had a rough year, and they've kept me going. So I'm gonna be here with everybody for the Patriot.
Well, it was good talking to you, Pete. Good run, and we will see you in the next one.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll hopefully see you again after another top 3.
Hope so as well. That was Pete Baskins, our third place finisher tonight, and we'll send it back upstairs to Austin.
Thanks, Kenny. JR, this race was just crazy from start to finish. There were so many lead changes, and there were so many guys that were good pushers and good leaders. And at the end, Brian Yazik was really just showing he could do either one he wanted to. And Thomas George, I didn't see him winning this race, and I certainly didn't see DRJ, Don Runkle Jr., or James Kahula being that much of a factor as the chips started to fall.
Yeah, absolutely. the tracks, Talladega, Daytona, they're always wild card races. You just never know exactly what's going to happen. Tonight, like you said, we saw guys up front that you don't normally see. We saw guys ride around in the back of the pack until the last 15 laps and almost have a shot to win this race. So it's always a wild card where you never know what's going to happen. Tonight, the points could have been completely shaken up, but unfortunately for the rest of the competition, the top two in points finished first and second tonight. So kind of one of those weird things, the way it played out. Things worked out for them. Could have been a lot different, but good to see guys like Pete Baskins, Don Runkle Jr., those guys finishing up front. They deserve good runs, and tonight they were able to pull it off.
Yeah, it's definitely huge for George and Yazik to be able to come in here and not only survive all the chaos, but actually pretty much maximize their points relatively. So, I mean, I'm sure both of those drivers came in thinking that this could have been one of their drop weeks, and turns out it's one of their best results of the season. So that's really going to propel them further into this championship fight. Krobach takes a big hit in the points by being wrecked out later in the going. Mahan could have done a little bit better, but he ran okay, but only 20th, and drivers behind, it's kind of hit or miss from that on. So it's starting to turn into a two-horse race, but we do still have a little over or a little less than halfway of the season to go.
We've got just over a third of the season left. Hopefully, you folks at home can join us for the rest. The next broadcast for the Pretty Good Racing League is next Tuesday, October 11th from the Charlotte Motor Speedway, the Roval, the Frankenstein track. That broadcast goes live at 8:50 p.m. Eastern Time, and the next Virtual Grip Network broadcast is going to be the Dirt Street Stock Series of the Bootleg Racing League as they take on Limitland Motorsports Park. That broadcast is Friday, October 7th, and goes live at 7:10 p.m. Eastern Time. This has been a pretty good production of the Virtual Grip Network, and on behalf of myself, Austin Belkey, my booth mates J.R. Shepard and Kenny Kibbe, our director Trevor Greenfield, and everyone else behind the scenes at the Virtual Grip Network, thank you so much for watching, and good night.